Irreconcilable hatred curse. The Feng Chen curses were only good for screwing people over and tricking them. They had no real uses. That was what Ling Chen had originally thought about them. However, this view had greatly changed over time. The might of the Feng Chen curses had been displayed through various applications. The cherry blossom god representative was incredibly powerful. If Ling Chen was to directly fight against her, even 10 of him would not be enough to deal with her. And yet, under the utter despair curse and soul-stealing curse, she had become Ling Chen's pet. The ice demon beast was incredibly powerful, and yet she had committed suicide because of the utter despair curse. As for these normal players, the Feng Chen curses were even more effective against them. 1 million troops? They were nothing in front of the Feng Chen curses. This was the first time Ling Chen had used the deity curse. He looked down at the leaders kowtowing and worshipping him, feeling incredibly delighted. He grinned as he looked at Long Tian Yun and said arrogantly, "Long Tian Yun, now you know that you're trash and scum, right?" Trash and scum. No one had ever dared to call Long Tian Yun these things before. Even the Gu family's 3 brothers didn't dare to say such a thing. To humiliate him like this, no matter how large their backing was, Long Tian Yun would definitely make it so that they would not be able to live within China anymore. However, Long Tian Yun's body froze as he lowered his head and hurriedly replied, "Yes. Yes. In front of you, I'm merely trash and scum. Please forgive me." Crash. Countless glasses fell to the ground. Upon hearing Long Tian Yun say this sort of thing, Flame Shadow and Song Yen felt as if they had been struck by lightning. Flame Shadow scrambled over as he hollered, "Young master! Young master, what happened to you? How could you say such things? Did he cast some sort of witchcraft on you? Young master, please wake up!" Just as he finished yelling, Long Tian Yun suddenly turned to look at him, his eyes filled with anger, killing intent and coldness. "Flame Shadow, I'll say whatever the hell I want to. What gives you the right to tell me what to say? Piss off, and if you dare to continue to utter nonsense, I'll rip apart your mouth." That expression, aura, tone, and attitude were undoubtedly Long Tian Yun's. It didn't look like he was being forced to do this at all. Flame Shadow's mouth dropped open as his face paled, not daring to say anything. Long Tian Yun turned, and when he faced Ling Chen again, his expression became incredibly excited and emotional, as if he had met his long-lost father. "And what about all of you?" Ling Chen looked to the other leaders. Yes, yes, yes. We're all trash and scum. Oh no, we're worse than trash. Please, a person of great moral stature doesn't quibble with those of lower moral stature. Please forgive us and give us a chance to change our ways. We definitely won't do such stupid things again. I'm a bastard. I'm worse than pigs or dogs. I'm the worst scum. No, no. That's me. I'm the worst scum. I've committed such blasphemy. I don't have any face to continue living in this world anymore. Ling Tian, I was wrong. I was deranged and am an imbecile. Wu, as long as you forgive me, I'm willing to use the rest of my life to atone for my sins. 25 guild leaders yelled out in mournful voices, crying pathetically. Each of them fought to curse themselves more. Their tears of repentance formed great puddles on the ground. The grassy plains fell completely silent, and only sobbing and self-deprecating cursing could be heard. Is that so? Ling Chen immediately released a second deity curse as he yelled, Since you know you're in the wrong, tell these people to piss off. As if they had heard an imperial edict, the leaders kneeling on the ground trembled as they desperately grabbed their communication devices and yelled their orders into them. Yin Huang Alliance, heed my orders. Everyone who's still here, get the hell out of here. Piss off as far as possible right away. If I see anyone here within 5 minutes, I'll destroy his entire family. Long Tian Yun roared with a dark expression. Hear that? All of you scram. Not a single one of you is to stay. Go! I'll give you all 5 seconds to all return to the Black Flames Alliance's headquarters. What are you all standing around for? Hurry up and piss off. All troops retreat. Got it? The yells from 25 leaders filled half the grassy plains, and this was the strictest order that all of the troops had heard. Looking at the high and mighty figures kneeling subserviently in front of Ling Tian, even kowtowing and weeping, all of the players felt that their entire alliance's face had been completely trampled upon. Hearing these orders, looks of derision and condescension appeared on countless players' faces. They simply couldn't watch their leaders act so shamefully. Countless white lights flashed on the grassy plains. Within 10 seconds, the 3 million attacking players had all left. Only the 25 leaders were left kneeling on the grassy plains. Upon seeing their players leave, they showed expressions of satisfaction and relief as they looked up towards Ling Chen in the sky. The grassy plains that had been filled with a sea of people was instantly vacated, and the people on the platform were dumbfounded. Skyfall, against the sky and judging sky grabbed the railings on the platform as they leaned forwards, their eyes larger than even a cow's. Am I seeing things? Skyfall whispered as he rubbed his eyes. We're definitely seeing things, Judging Sky replied as he sucked in a breath. Would anyone believe that we're not seeing things? Against the Sky said as he stared. What's going on? Xiao Qiu Feng glanced at Yin Feng. He definitely didn't believe that the leaders of these guilds would be willing to kneel down to Ling Tian and act so shamefully. While Ling Tian is indeed ridiculously powerful, even if he was 10 times more powerful and could wipe out all of the attacking troops in a second, suppressing them to such an extent that they couldn't breathe just isn't possible. They would rather die. No idea at all, Yun Feng said as he shook his head. Feng! Chun! Curse! Yun Meng Xian subconsciously muttered this, but Li Xiaoshui heard this with her acute senses and asked as she looked over. Feng curse? What's that? Yun Meng Xian smiled as she replied. Ling Tian mentioned it to me before. He has a skill that can affect other people's minds. Back then, I didn't pay it much mind, but now I've seen just how powerful it is. We've gone through so much pain and effort to defend the new city until now, suffering countless casualties. In the end, we still would not have been able to protect the new city. And yet, he, without shedding any blood and with just a few words, not only destroyed the other side's reputation, he also sent those 3 million players packing. Ling Tian has such an ability? Li Xiaoshui asked in shock. She turned and looked at the figure in the distance as she said, I suddenly pity them. I'm sure that they'll regret appearing here for the rest of their lives. Moreover, based on my understanding towards Ling Tian, this is not his true revenge. The true revenge, their nightmares, has not yet begun. After the attacking players all left, the crisis of the new city was averted. Although Ling Chen and Shi Ling's attacks were incredibly powerful, they could not do much in protecting the new city. What was truly useful was the Feng Chen curse. A single Feng Chen curse sent 3 million players packing. In fact, it would have been just as effective against 30 million players. This was just how terrifying the Feng Chen curses were for even the apex experts to be terrified of them. With the crisis averted, Ling Chen didn't feel like watching these leaders continue to make fools out of themselves. The deity curse's time was also nearly up. Ling Chen tapped his chin as a sinister smile appeared on his face. He flicked a finger, canceling the deity curse as he activated an irreconcilable hatred curse. The expressions of all the bosses and leaders froze. After the deity curse was cancelled and they thought back to what they just did, they felt incomparable shame. Logically speaking, they should have felt so angry towards Ling Chen that they wanted to rip him into shreds. That's right, they were furious to the extreme, and their eyes became red like those of a savage beast's. However, they were not glaring at Ling Chen. It was almost as if Ling Chen did not exist. Long Tian Yun, you bastard. I want to rip off your skin, tear your tendons, and rip you apart to feed the dogs. Mo Gu Lin shrieked as he sprang towards Long Tian Yun, his hands gripping onto Long Tian Yun's neck. He then opened his mouth and bit his shoulder, causing Long Tian Yun to howl in pain. Black Flame's Wild Gale. You dared to screw me over in poker last game. I'll friggin' kill you. I'll definitely kill you today. Mo Gu Lin. Do you remember the 30 cents you owe me for ice cream from 28 years ago? You've owed me for 28 years, and I've hated you for 28 years. Today, you'll be paying it back with your life. Go die. Bastard. Why is your wife prettier than my wife? If I don't cut you into 8 pieces and grind your bones to dust, I'm not a human. You bastard. I personally heard you saying that Mars' gravity isn't handsome. You dare to say that Mars' gravity isn't handsome? I'll fight you to the death. 25 leaders furiously fought each other like rabid dogs, using their hands, feet, and teeth. Finally, they took out their weapons and started swinging them around. Their expressions were all extremely savage, their movements incredibly brutal. Their throats were all hoarse from yelling, as if everyone around them were their archenemies, who could not be forgiven no matter what. Yola, let's go! In the distance, the woman in red turned around, revealing a seductive figure. Go? To where? Yola asked. It's time for us to go back. You should know that there's a time limit when crossing world boundaries. Plus, there isn't much for us to watch anymore, the woman in red replied. Go back? But you spent so much effort finding him. Aren't you even going to meet him? Yola walked over as she asked in confusion. The woman in red pursed up her lips as she leisurely replied. Indeed, I was quite eager to meet that bastard, but it seems that now is not the right time. It's already been 3 times, and if I lose to him again, you should know that the consequences will be severe. Yola's beautiful eyebrows were raised as she said in surprise and amusement. Does that mean you don't possess the confidence to beat him? No way. You're already so strong, and I'm quite certain that you haven't even shown your full strength to us yet. Before, I possessed absolute confidence in defeating him because I possess within my hands an invincible power. The woman in red lifted up her sleek, snow-white right hand. On her index finger, middle finger, and ring finger were red, yellow, and blue rings, respectively. However, when he appeared, they reacted strangely, causing me to think of an interesting legend. What legend? Yola asked. The woman in red's expression became serious as she looked at the 3 rings and spoke slowly. At the place where I obtained these rings, there were records stating that in the west and east of the mystic moon world, there were godly items left behind from the ancient times by true gods. Because they were so powerful, although all of the true gods disappeared and that era ended, they continued existing. The item in the west is my lachesis, while the one in the east is called the Lunar Scourge. Lunar Scourge, Yola repeated. The lachesis is incredibly arrogant, and I'm currently unable to wield even 10% of its true power. The only thing that could cause it to have such a reaction is something of the same level. The only thing in this world of the same level is another godly item. You're that item is on him? Yola asked in a low voice. That should be the case. The woman in red wrapped her arms around her bountiful breasts as she said in frustration. That's why I don't possess absolute certainty in beating him. While I'm unable to completely control this item's power, he might have already completely controlled his item. I really hate that bastard. Maybe he really is your greatest rival, Yola said as she looked at Ling Tian in the distance with amusement. I don't want to lose that bet, so I'm going to wait until I can fully control lachesis before confronting him. The woman in red spread apart her slim and long fingers. The yellow ring on her middle finger let out a warm yellow light, covering her and Yola. By the time the light had disappeared, the two of them were also gone. The battle royale between the 25 leaders gradually drew to a close. The battle strength of the leaders was on a spectrum of two extremes. On one end of the spectrum, the leaders never participated in battle, and only managed the guild. These sorts of leaders died after being hit a few times. The other type focused on their personal strength. With their status and resources, they had the best equipment and opportunities, making themselves much stronger than normal players. As such, those who did not have any battle power quickly died, leaving behind 10 or so experts, who were covered with splendorous equipment and releasing magnificent skills.
Ling Chen, why are they fighting amongst themselves?
Shidisika asked as she leaned against Ling Chen's chest. Her incredibly cute face was filled with curiosity as she smiled.
It's a bit complicated.
Ling Chen rubbed his nose as he pointed towards the people below them as he started to explain.
That man in yellow owed the man in black 30 cents from 28 years ago, and that man in green clothes thinks that the man in white has bad taste in clothes. That man in purple thinks the man in red is too ugly. The man in gray thinks the man in cyan's name is too unpleasant. So they all started fighting. The worst one is the one who said that Mars' gravity isn't handsome. That guy deserves to die. Ha ha!
Shidisika started laughing, her face looking like a blooming beautiful flower. She looked up as she suddenly spoke.
Ling Chen, can I ask you a question? You need to answer seriously, because the answer is very important to me.
Another 5 or 6 people fell, and there were 6 people remaining. Their killing intent, savageness, rage, and roars were no weaker than before. Ling Chen met Shidisika's eyes as he asked,
What is it? I met Ling Chen in that Snow-White world. From then until now, we've known each other for less than a day.
Shidisika looked into Ling Chen's eyes and spoke slowly, looking incredibly earnest. Her eyes looked so bright that even the stars in the night sky would seem dim in comparison.
Ling Chen saved me and took me out from that place, so it should be me repaying Ling Chen and doing things for Ling Chen. But, I haven't done anything for Ling Chen. On that mountain, when we encountered that scary leopard, why did you tell the little fox to escape with me while you stayed back by yourself? And when you finally avoided it, why did you attract its attention when it was going to attack us? Why would you protect me? You evidently couldn't beat it, so wasn't that just committing suicide? After you saved me, it should be me repaying you. So why do you treat me so well to the point that you would give up your own life?
Shidisika's words caused Ling Chen to pause in surprise. As a man, protecting a delicate girl was something that he subconsciously felt that he should do. As a young girl, being protected by a man was something normal, and yet Shidisika was asking this question about something that everyone would think was extremely normal. Ling Chen stroked Shidisika's arm as he smiled and replied,
Because I brought Sha Sha out from that mysterious world, so it's my responsibility to protect Sha Sha. Moreover, Sha Sha's a girl while I'm a man. It's a man's duty to protect girls. Is that answer good enough?
Shidisika's eyes stared at him, looking like there was something trembling within them. She then relaxed and rested her head against Ling Chen's chest as she softly spoke.
Ling Chen, will you continue to protect me like you did today? I mean, until a long time, a long, long time.
Shidisika's voice became as soft as the wind, containing some sort of hidden meaning that Ling Chen couldn't decipher. These words made Ling Chen think of the words Shuirua had spoken into his ears the first time they had kissed. As those memories flashed in his mind, he couldn't help but reply,
Of course, until the day I die.
Shidisika happily closed her eyes as she continued to lean against his chest, a gentle and satisfied smile on her face. Wouldn't it be great if this sort of heartwarming feeling and blissful feeling would last forever? However, all of this was temporary, like a bubble. Although it was beautiful, it wouldn't last forever. It would soon disappear without a trace. I've chosen you. What should I do?
Arg!
As cries sounded out, Long Tian Yuan and Black Flame's wild gale fell. Although they lay on the ground, their eyes were still filled with flames of fury, as if they were unreconciled with their deaths. Finally, only a single person was left, the Alliance Master of the Golden Age Alliance, Imogu Lin. He was in the top 5 in the Earth rankings, and was the strongest out of all the leaders. By now, the irreconcilable hatred curse's effects had ended. Imogu Lin regained his normal state of mind, and his entire body trembled. Seeing the corpses around him, his face became incredibly pale, as his entire body erupted into cold sweat. His pupils rapidly dilated and contracted as if he had just experienced a terrifying nightmare. He looked up as his body trembled, and he stumbled backwards.
Ling Tian, you!
Thinking to the shameful display from before, his mind buzzed. He felt like he was going to faint.
Congratulations, Alliance Master of the Golden Age Alliance. You've won this dogfight. You're truly invincible and awe-inspiring. However, after watching that interesting performance, I don't want to see your ugly faces anymore.
Ling Chen's tone suddenly became cold.
So it's time you also piss off.
Ling Chen had never had any conflict with the Golden Age Alliance before, but because they had attacked the new city out of greed, he didn't show any courtesy to Imogu Lin. He looked down and squeezed Shadisika's small hand as he said,
Sha, do you want to see what it's like when a cat meets something it's scared of? Sure.
Shadisika became quite excited. Ling Chen smirked as he looked to Imogu Lin and released a scaredy cat curse.
Ling Tian, what did you do to us? Ah!
Imogu Lin, who had stretched out his hand to point at Ling Chen, suddenly cried out in shock as his face twitched and trembled. Following this, his entire body, including his hands and the weapon held within them, started to shake. His eyes widened as he was filled with extreme fear, as if he had seen the most terrifying thing in the world.
What did you just say?
Ling Chen sinisterly asked as his eyes narrowed. Imogu Lin reacted as if he had heard the devil's voice. He screamed in fear as he scrambled backwards, even losing his balance and falling on his bottom. The weapon in his hands fell to the ground with a loud clang. Imogu Lin stared at Ling Chen in terror and couldn't even get up. He didn't even bother to pick up the gold-grade weapon, which he viewed to be as precious as his life, as he did his best to move backwards as he trembled. His eyes looked as if they were going to burst from their sockets when he screamed hysterically,
Don't come over here! Don't come over here!
Imogu Lin's screams were filled with utter terror, and he somehow mustered up enough strength to crawl away. He looked like a dog as he scrambled away. The world finally fell silent. Long-awaited reunion.
This scene reminds me of what happened to that number 3 expert in the East Ocean continent, Cruelty at Chinawa,
Li Xiaoshui said in a low voice.
Meng Xian, I guess that this is also one of those Feng curses that you mentioned earlier. It should be.
Yun Meng Xian replied as she nodded with a smile on her face. The crisis had been averted, and their hopeless situation had been completely turned upside down. Within her heart, she felt as if the dark clouds had been dispelled, revealing the beautiful sky. Looking at Ling Tian, who was flying towards them, her beautiful eyes became slightly moist as she muttered,
This is great! This is great!
The Yin Huang Alliance and all of the other factions had left, but no one could accept how this had happened. Everyone on the platform felt as if their minds had taken a severe blow. After watching the 25 leaders fight like mad, and then watching Imogu Lin run off like a frightened dog, they simply couldn't believe their eyes. They would rather believe they were watching some kind of movie.
Thank goodness, we didn't become enemies with Ling Tian,
Skyfall said. Against the Sky and Judging Sky rapidly nodded.
Luckily, We listened to Big Sister and laid in wait this entire time, waiting for an opportunity. Otherwise,
Thinking to what had befallen even the Yin-Huang alliance, Skyfall felt cold sweat trickle down his body. Against the sky and judging Sky once again rapidly nodded.
Great! Great! Great!
At this moment, Yun Feng finally recovered and started cheering, and almost started jumping up and down in excitement.
3 uncles, Ol Xiao, Ming Xian, Chi Chi, Big Sister Bing Yao, Big Miss Li, and Winter and 100 Miles, we won! We won! That's right, we won! We created an unbelievable miracle.
Li Xiaoshui turned and smiled. Within her heart, this was truly a miraculous outcome. Moreover, this miracle wasn't solely because of Ling Tian, they had somehow persisted until the Savior had arrived.
Hey!
The 3 heavenly kings also smiled. Although the battle had been incredibly tough and harsh, losing all of their players, they couldn't help but feel delighted at such an outcome. Moreover, their Skyfall dynasty had made a great contribution to the survival of this new city.
Big Miss Li is correct. This was an unbelievable miracle.
Even Xiao Qiufeng's stony face relaxed.
That Ling Tian is stupidly overpowered.
With Winter of that year's personality, everyone thought that he would start yelling and jumping. However, he had a complicated expression on his face as he continuously stared at Ling Chen. 100 Miles of Ice was also the same.
Humph. No, he's not. Big Brother Ling Tian has always been really strong. He's the strongest person in the world.
Xiao Qi harumphed in dissatisfaction before she ran to the edge of the platform as she jumped and waved at Ling Chen and Shi Ling.
Big Brother Ling Tian. Big Brother Ling Tian.
Xiao Qi's gaze fell towards Ling Chen's chest. After Ling Chen appeared, he had faced the vast attacking forces, so his back had been facing them the entire time. As such, none of them saw Shidisika. At this moment, as Ling Chen came closer, they found that there was a little girl sitting in front of Ling Chen. She was completely white as if she was made of snow.
Who is that girl?
Li Xiaoshui asked Yun Ming Xian beside her. Yun Ming Xian shook her head.
I don't know. I've never seen her before either.
A gentle wind blew over, and as Snow Cherry flew at her fastest speed, Ling Chen quickly arrived at the platform. Looking at the emotional and passionate gazes, he couldn't help but smile. He hugged Shidisika as he jumped off from Snow Cherry's back and landed on the platform.
Big Brother Ling Tian.
Xiao Qi leapt over with tears in her eyes.
Welcome back, Ling Tian.
Yun Ming Xian smiled gently.
Long time no see. You finally remembered to come back?
Li Xiaoshui smiled, with a slight hint of blame.
Ling Tian, you were so cool just then. How the hell did you do that?
Light seemed to shine out of Yun Feng's eyes. Xiao Qiufeng nodded towards him, and then looked at Xiao Qi. Xiao Qi had leapt towards him and hugged him tightly. She couldn't stop her tears of joy from flowing out. She happily jumped up and down as she hugged Ling Chen.
Great, great! I finally get to see Big Brother Ling Tian again. I thought I would never be able to see you again. Woo ha ha!
Ling Chen smiled as he patted Xiao Qi's shoulders.
Don't be silly. We've only separated for a short while to do the things we need to do. How could we never see each other again?
He held Xiao Qi's arms as he looked at her tear-stained face and said softly,
I'm very happy that you've returned safely.
Xiao Qi vigorously wiped away her tears as she smiled. Seeing how cute she was, no one would think that she was the Flame Empress who had annihilated 2 million players in a single attack.
I have such a good big brother and dad, as well as good sisters and my favorite big brother Ling Tian. Of course I'd return safely. In future, nothing will happen to me either.
Ling Chen smiled. Back then, he had told Xiao Qi to go to the lava purgatory, as he felt that there was a slight hope for her. And now, Although Xiaoqi should have been dead by now, she was standing here, making him feel like a huge weight had been taken off his heart.
Can't you two be lovey-dovey another time? You're ignoring all of this,
Li Xiaoshui said with an expression of mock sadness. Xiaoqi's face became red, and she let go of Ling Chen and returned to Yun Meng Xian's side. Ling Chen's gaze fell on each person as he spoke.
I'm sorry I came late. Meng Xian, Xiaoshui, you must have gone through a lot. Yun Feng, Alliance Master Xiao, thank you for your assistance. No need to thank me, no need at all. Meng Xian's my little sister, after all,
Yun Feng hurriedly said.
Same goes for me,
Chao Chiufeng said.
And these three people should be the Skyfall Dynasty's three heavenly kings, right? Who are these two people?
After looking at the three heavenly kings, Ling Chen's gaze fell on Winter of that year and 100 Miles of Ice. Ling Chen was quite surprised that the three heavenly kings would be here. Their presence here meant that they had helped defend the new city, but after thinking about it, Ling Chen simply couldn't think of why they would do that.
Haha, Ling Tian, this should be the second time we've met, and the first time we've spoken,
Skyfall said as he laughed.
I'm Skyfall. You can directly call me by my name. These two are my little brothers, against the sky and judging sky. I'm called Winter of that year, and this is my boss, 100 Miles of Ice.
Winter of that year spoke, a strangeness in his voice as he continued to stare at Ling Chen. Ling Chen's gaze lingered on Winter of that year and 100 Miles of Ice for a while longer before nodding.
Chi-Chi's back, Su-Su's back, and now you're back as well.
Yun Meng Xian spoke in a soft voice, her gaze joyful.
I hope that now that all of you are back, you won't leave again. Especially you, Ling Tian. Although Heartstream has been destroyed, as long as we're still here, Heartstream still exists. Moreover, you've always been the soul of Heartstream, unless one day you're unwilling to stay with us. We can talk about all of this later, and you can talk about it for as long as you want.
Li Xiaoshui smiled as she cut off Yun Meng Xian. Her gaze fell downwards as she looked at the white-haired girl in Ling Chen's embrace.
Ling Tian, you still haven't introduced this little sister. Where did you find her?
Ling Chen looked down at Shidisika as he smiled, saying,
She's called Sha, and I met her at the top of a tall mountain before I brought her here. Hi everyone, I'm called Sha.
Shidisika waved her little hand at everyone, a look of joy and delight on her cute face. She didn't look scared or nervous at all, unlike most young girls.
Wow! She's so cute! I'm going to die from cuteness.
Xiaoqi's eyes shone. The girl's hair was white as snow, and her skin was waxy and smooth. Her face was cute and perfect, looking thousands of times cuter than even the most exquisite doll. This made her simply irresistible to girls who love cute things, and Xiaoqi couldn't resist as she sprang over and hugged Shidisika, enjoying how soft she felt. This gave Sha a small fright, but she didn't resist. She instead began to smile even happier as she said in a soft voice,
Big sister is very cute as well.
Ling Chen knew that as soon as Xiaoqi saw Sha, she wouldn't be able to resist hugging her. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly noticed something, feeling incredibly confused. He clearly remembered that when he had first seen Sha, he felt as if his consciousness had been hit by something, to the point that his mind went blank. Within that white world, he forgot to breathe and couldn't feel his heartbeat. It was as if he was separated from the world. Within his eyes, heart, mind, and soul, there was only Sha's snow-white face. And that feeling had persisted for a long time. The first time he had seen her, he had almost lost his mind and self-control. It was as if the instant he saw her, his soul had been stolen by her beauty. She was so cute and beautiful that no matter how much he thought, he couldn't think of words sufficient to describe her. This was because no matter how beautiful and elegant words were, they would be a sacrilege to her beauty. If Chi Yu's beauty was to the point that it couldn't exist in the real world. Sha's beauty was something that could not even be imagined. But, when Li Xiaoshui, Yun Meng Xian, Yun Feng, Xiao Qiu Feng Mu Bingyao, and the others looked at Sha, their eyes were filled with appreciation and liking, but they didn't seem overly emotional, much less show the emotions he had felt when he had first met Sha. Ling Chen's mind was much more powerful than normal people's minds, and he was certain it was much stronger than those of everyone present. However, their reactions when looking at Sha were so normal. If he had been so moved by her beauty, they should have been even more so.
Meng Xian Xiao Shui, don't you think Sha is very cute?
Ling Chen asked.
Of course she's very cute.
Li Xiaoshui looked at him in amusement.
It's no wonder you brought her back with you. If it was me, if I saw such a cute girl all by herself, I'd want to take her home and enjoy keeping a cute loli all to myself.
Ling Chen. What was going on? Perhaps everyone's perception of beauty was different. Maybe Sha's appearance perfectly fit his definition of beauty, which was why he had reacted in such a way, but evidently this didn't apply to all people. That was most likely why. That was the only reason Ling Chen could find. The departed Sword Emperor.
Ling Tian, after not seeing you for a while, you've become so strong. Strong to the point of incredulity. We had so many people, yet we couldn't stop them. We all fell into despair. When you came back, you scared them witless and sent them packing in an instant. You're even more overpowered than a legendary mysterious god grade boss. If you didn't come back in time, the new city would have been destroyed by now.
Yun Feng said emotionally. Before, everyone had thought that in those last moments, even if Ling Tian returned, he wouldn't be able to change the result. After all, the other side had a whole 4 million players. In the end, Ling Tian really had appeared, and the conclusion was truly shocking. Without expending much effort, he had killed many, scared off others, and had even caused the leaders to completely lose all of their faith. None of them could have thought that despite being a player, Ling Tian could have done such a thing. This had completely exceeded the capabilities of players.
That's not the whole story.
Before Ling Chen could reply, Li Xiaoshui spoke first.
If Yun Feng hadn't brought the Disillusion Alliance, we wouldn't have been able to stop the Yan Huang Alliance's initial wave. If it wasn't for Chi returning and the Disillusion Alliance and Snow Moon Luan being wiped out, the new city still would have fallen. If it wasn't for Alliance Master Shao bringing the entire Battle Alliance, the attacking forces would have long since charged to the city. If it wasn't for the 3 Heavenly Kings bringing the Skyfall dynasty to help, we wouldn't have been able to contend with those attacking forces at all.
Also, if it wasn't for little Su, we definitely couldn't have lasted for so long. And there was also winter of that year and 100 miles of ice. If you hadn't stood guard in front of the Azure Forest village for so long and chased away all of the players who went there, the new city would have been discovered long ago. Without any of the people here, the new city would not have been able to survive.
Following this, Li Xiaoshui told Ling Chen everything that had happened in detail, all of the fear and shock, all of the brutal battles, all of the twists, as well as all of the despair and hope. She told him about Shao Qi's amazing attack, Suer's miraculous formation, the Battle Alliance's arrival, and the Skyfall dynasty's surprising reinforcement. Hearing about all of this, Ling Chen was quite surprised. When he had arrived, he faced 4 million players, but he had never thought that in total, more than 20 million players had attacked the new city. This number caused even him to break out into a cold sweat. And yet, they had persisted until he had arrived with just the Disillusion Alliance, the Snow Moon Luan, the Battle Alliance, and the Skyfall dynasty. This was indeed a miracle. Li Xiaoshui charmingly rolled her eyes at Ling Chen as she continued.
Finally, the role of the savior was snatched by the man who arrived late. I know you've been busy with something important and didn't have any time for the new city. In fact, The only connection you have with it is the city creation token that you provided to help Ming Xian. However, in the end, the new city came from the city creation token that you provided, so you count as one of the parents of the new city. As such, you still have some responsibility to protect the new city. The crisis of the new city this time was when you were needed the most, and yet you took such a long time to come. If all of these outsiders hadn't paid such a price, can you imagine what the result would have been?
Li Xiaoshui's words turned Ling Chen, this savior who should have been thanked, into an irresponsible latecomer who should feel guilty. Thinking to how they couldn't contact Ling Chen no matter what they tried, and that he had only arrived at the last moment, a slight look of displeasure appeared on Yunming Xian and Shaoqi's faces. Ling Chen gave a courteous laugh as he quickly said,
"Indeed, it's my fault that I didn't come as soon as I was needed. Everyone, I'll remember the favor you've done for us today."
Ling Chen wasn't surprised that Yun Feng had come. Yun Feng's temperament was hot-blooded, and he deeply loved Ming Xian. As long as Yunming Xian said the word, he would move out the entire Disillusion Alliance without even a trace of hesitation. Xiao Qiufeng was the same, although if Shaoqi hadn't come back, notwithstanding his friendship with Yun Feng, he wouldn't have come. However, Ling Chen simply couldn't understand why the Skyfall dynasty had come to help. With the scale of the attacking forces, even if the Skyfall dynasty helped, they would only be able to stall for a short while and definitely wouldn't have been able to save the new city. Moreover, their forces being wiped out would cause the overall strength of the Skyfall dynasty to plunge downwards. Furthermore, if the Yin Huang Alliance took the opportunity to attack them, it would be possible that the Skyfall dynasty would never be able to recover. The Skyfall dynasty had broken off its partnership with Li Xiaoshui, and they didn't have any relationship with Yunming Xian or himself, so why had they helped protect the new city without any hesitation?
Come to think of it, there's someone important who I almost forgot,
Li Xiaoshui said.
If it wasn't for her causing the collapse of the Yin Huang Alliance's cavalry at the beginning, the Snow Moon Luan and Disillusion Alliance definitely couldn't have held back the Yin Huang Alliance's first wave for so long.
At that moment, a wild gale burst forth as a gray shadow flew out from under the platform into the distance. The lightning falcon was simply too fast, and in the blink of an eye, it was already nearly 100 meters away.
"Oh!"
Li Xiaoshui paused as she looked at Ling Chen and said in a low voice,
"It looks like she's not interested in meeting up with us."
The Sword Emperor departed without any hesitation. Up until she had appeared to now, she had not uttered a single sentence, nor had she even looked at one of them in the eyes. The entire time, she had focused on killing the attacking players and resting. The number of players she had killed was simply innumerable. It was as if she didn't want the new city to be destroyed and possessed a desire stronger than anyone else to protect it. She had fallen unconscious for a short period of time, and after she had woken up, she had left unhesitatingly without saying any goodbyes. Seeing her suddenly leave, Ling Chen's mind and heart tightened as an inexpressible emotion crazily spread throughout his entire body as he yelled, "Wait! Don't go!" The departing figure didn't seem to hear him and continued to fly even further away. Ling Chen did not hesitate as he rushed to the edge of the platform. Just as he moved, a small hand grabbed his arm as Shadisika's anxious voice sounded out.
"Ling Chen, are you going to chase after her? I want to come with you."
Ling Chen didn't have time to think. He wrapped an arm around Shadisika and jumped off the platform, landing on Snow Cherry's back. Snow Cherry instantly flew at her fastest speed, turning into a white shadow and speeding off. The remaining people on the platform looked at each other, not knowing why the Sword Emperor's departure had evoked such a big reaction from Ling Chen. Only Li Xiaoshui slightly frowned before she lightly sighed to herself.
If I was her, what would I do?
Snow Cherry's speed when mounted was incredibly fast, and there was almost nothing in the Mystic Moon world that could outrun her. However, The Lightning Falcon was also extremely fast. After all, as something with lightning in its name, speed was its specialty. Although it was carrying someone on its back, its speed was still as fast as lightning. Although Snow Cherry flew at her fastest speed, she was still unable to close the gap between them. Ling Chen had already used up his 5 broken shadows for the day, and could only rely on Snow Cherry to desperately give chase. He held Shadisika against him as he yelled, "Don't go! I want to talk to you. Hurry up and stop." The Sword Emperor did not look back, as if she had not heard Ling Chen's voice, nor did the Lightning Falcon slow down. Instead, it cried out as if it was trying to speed up. As they flew at their fastest speeds, they had flown quite a distance away where there were no humans and only high-leveled monsters. "Dia Wu. Dia Wu. I know it's you. I'm Tian." In this place where there were no other people, Ling Chen finally yelled out the 2 names he had suppressed within his memories. He was certain that the Sword Emperor was Xianyuan Dia Wu, the Heaven's Edge, Butterfly's dance that only he and Xianyuan Dia Wu knew. That night, she had saved him at the Long family's residence. Her betrayal of the Long family and the Xianyuan family, as well as her defense of the new city. Apart from Xianyuan Dia Wu, who could she be? If she wasn't Dia Wu, why would she do all of this? Evidently, Dia Wu recognized him, but after she left the Long family and the Yin Huang alliance, she hadn't come to find him and seemed to be avoiding him. Now that they could be reunited, why did she suddenly leave? Moreover, she left so suddenly and decisively without saying a word to him. "Dia Wu. I'm Tianya. You're Dia Wu, and I'm Tianya. We were born on the same day, in the same month, in the same year. We met when we were 5 years old. We celebrated our 6th birthdays together. We ate cake together under the peach blossom tree, and there were many pretty peach blossom petals on it. At that time, we both cried. Do you remember all of this? Dia Wu. You taught me how to read, how to do maths, and how to play the violin. For me, you desperately trained with your sword. Whenever you learned a new move, you would show it to me. We even created a beautiful style that belonged onto us called Heaven's Edge, Butterfly's Dance. I'll never forget any of this, and I know you'll never forget it either. Dia Wu. Dia Wu. Please stop. Why do you have to go?" Ling Chen yelled out with all of his strength, and he was sure that Dia Wu could hear him. However, the figure in front of him continued to speed away without stopping. "Dia Wu, why?" Ling Chen wondered. Did she hate him? But if she hated him, why did she save him on that night? Why would she leave the Long family and Xianyuan family for him and protect the new city? But if she didn't hate him, why was she desperately running? "Snow Cherry, go faster if you can. Shi Ling, help me lock onto her, and don't let her leave our sight," Ling Chen said in a daze. Shi Ling's attack range was 200 meters, which meant that she could lock onto targets within 200 meters of her. Once locked onto, the Sword Emperor would be unable to use teleport scrolls or log off. If you're not Dia Wu. Snow Cherry was already flying as fast as possible, but after chasing for so long, she still couldn't close the gap between them. Evidently, the Lightning Falcon was just as fast as Snow Cherry. Ling Chen stopped calling out and forced himself to calm down. He instantly thought of something and took out the Twilight Spear while using Moment of Elegance to charge forwards. Swish. Ding! The Libra Orb's effects have been activated. Moment of Elegance, as cooldown time has been reset. Like a bolt of lightning, Ling Chen flashed 15 meters forwards. Moment of Elegance instantaneously shot him forwards, and because Ling Chen was already traveling at high speeds, he closed the gap between the Sword Emperor and himself by 10 or so meters. Ling Chen didn't hesitate to use Moment of Elegance again, once again closing the gap. Moment of Elegance
as cooldown time was only 10 seconds, and adding on the Libra Orb's continuous activation, Ling Chen had used it more than 10 times in less than a minute, placing him around 10 meters behind the Sword Emperor. The gray-cloaked figure standing on the Lightning Falcon was right in front of him, and with one more moment of elegance, he would be able to catch up to her.
Diao Wu, please stop. If you're determined to leave, can you at least give me a reason?
Ling Chen yelled at the Sword Emperor's back. Upon hearing this, the Sword Emperor finally reacted. Her right hand, wrapped with gray cloth, swept behind her as a silver light shot out towards Ling Chen's head. The piercing light grew larger within Ling Chen's eyes, and he subconsciously turned his head, the icy sword light passing by his throat. Following this, he felt strange ripples behind him as he looked back and saw that the sword that had just passed by him turned around, piercing towards his back. This was sword manipulation. Ling Chen was dumbfounded. When he was younger, he had heard Xianyuan Dia Wu mention that the highest level of the Xianyuan sword arts was sword manipulation. Sword manipulation was not some sci-fi or fantasy idea, and it truly existed within the Xianyuan family's sword arts. When one sword intent reached a certain level, they would be able to manifest it to control a sword to the point that they could use it to kill an enemy thousands of miles away. It was difficult to find a genius who could accomplish this even once in 100 years. For the rare ones who could accomplish this, they were already old in age by the time they achieved it. Xianyuan Dia Wu was the same age as he was, and yet she could already use sword manipulation. Ling Chen was utterly shocked, but this was not the time to dwell upon such things. He tilted his body, avoiding the sword that pierced towards him from behind as he locked on to where the Sword Emperor and released another moment of elegance. His body turned into a ray of light, coming behind the Sword Emperor in an instant. He was now only a palm away from her. Without thinking about it, Ling Chen let go of the Twilight Spear and Shidisika as he spread out his arms and hugged the Sword Emperor tightly from behind.
Diao Wu, you can't run anymore.
The Sword Emperor stiffened as if she had been struck by lightning. The sword that had been flying in the air lost its sword intent and powerlessly fell down. Everything fell silent for 3 seconds before the Sword Emperor started to vigorously struggle. For silver swords chaotically rose into the air around her, stabbing towards Ling Chen from different directions. Although the Sword Emperor's attack power couldn't compare to Ling Chen's, it was still quite terrifying. On the battlefield, not even the shield bearers could avoid being insta-killed by her. Although Ling Chen couldn't be killed so easily if he was hit by these 4 swords, the first 2 would be blocked by the evil god's mask, but he would be killed by the next 2. However, it was as if Ling Chen hadn't noticed these swords. Despite the swords flying closer and the Sword Emperor struggling, he continued to hug her tightly, unwilling to let go. He pressed his chest against her back as he softly spoke into her ears.
Diao Wu, Diao Wu, I never thought that I would be able to hug you again in my life.
The 4 swords stopped right before they pierced into Ling Chen, seeming as if they simply couldn't stab into him. When Ling Chen's words sounded in her ears, and the warmth spread throughout her body, she felt as if all of the strength had left her body, making her feel incredibly weak and causing the swords to fall.
Let me go!
The Sword Emperor spoke. The Sword Emperor, who never spoke, actually said something. It was a man's voice, and it was incredibly hoarse and dry, sounding even worse than an old man's voice.
I'm not the Diao Wu you're talking about. Let me go. Otherwise, I'll kill you.
Anyone who heard this voice would feel incredibly uncomfortable and imagine a withered demon in their mind. However, Ling Chen smiled and hugged her tighter as he closed her eyes and smelled her, warmly speaking.
If you're not Diao Wu, why did your sword stop just then? If you're not Diao Wu, why don't you use the system's lightning to smite me to death for hugging you like this? If you're not Diao Wu, why would you be able to use Heaven's Edge, Butterflies Dance that day? If you're not Diao, why would you desperately save me that night, betraying the Long family and Xianyuan family? If you're not Diao, why would your heart be beating so quickly? If you're not Diao, why would you have Diao's smell? Although we've separated for more than 10 years and Diao has grown up, I'll never forget Diao's smell. If you're not Diao, why would I feel so at peace while hugging you? If you're not Diao, why would you be secretly crying?
Ling Chen's hands touched the Sword Emperor's face, feeling a trace of wetness on the cloak. Ling Chen's questions caused the Sword Emperor's tears to fall. She bit her lips and desperately shook her head, forcing back her sobs. However, she was unable to say anything.
Diao,
Ling Chen softly spoke.
I know I can't be forgiven. You gave up so much for me, and despite recognizing you back then, I chose to retreat and didn't go to find you. Instead, I was with another girl.
After taking a deep breath, boundless guilt filled Ling Chen's chest as he continued.
However, at least give me a chance to make it up to you, all right? I swear to the heavens that over these years I've never forgotten about Diao. That night, I was taken by people and buried alive in a remote place. I thought I died, but I was unexpectedly taken by someone to an incredibly terrifying place. There, they cured me of the Isrock disease, but used my body to do cruel experiments.
Upon hearing this, the Sword Emperor's body violently trembled. Just these few sentences caused her to think of a place scarier than hell. She didn't dare to imagine just what sort of pain and suffering the man behind her had experienced over the years.
During those years, I saw many people die, but I continued to struggle to keep living because I wanted to take revenge, and because I couldn't let you go. I still wanted to meet you again. 7 years later, I finally escaped from there. After returning to China, the first thing I did was search for you, but I was told that 7 years ago, you fasted to death. Back then, I went crazy. I charged into the Long family and killed everyone I saw because I wanted to take revenge for my Diao.
Ling Chen's hands slightly tightened. After suddenly receiving news that Diao had died, the pain and despair he felt made him do the craziest thing. Thinking back, whenever he had gone mad, he had attacked the Long family. Once was because of Diao, and the other was because of Shura. The Sword Emperor's body completely froze as she mumbled.
6 years ago, that person was you, and you did it because fate really played a cruel joke on us. You thought I was dead, and I thought you were dead. Although we lived near each other for so many years, we didn't know the other person was still alive. However, these years have been more painful for you. After escaping from the Long family that year, I met a girl called Rurua. She was like an angel given to me by the heavens, who was able to heal my soul. She gave me a new life and a true home.
During those years, while bearing the pain of losing you, I stayed with her and vowed that I would protect her for the rest of my life so that I wouldn't lose her like I lost you. Half a year ago, after I fought with you, I saw you use our Heaven's Edge, Butterflies Dance. It made me realize that you were my long-lost Diao. I was delirious with joy, but I also felt afraid. If that wasn't you, the pain after feeling hope would rip apart my heart again. However, if it was you, I wouldn't know how to face you, because if you were my Diao, I would want to hug you tightly for the rest of my life. But I also made a promise to stay with Shura forever. No one will ever see my eyes again. No one will ever hear my voice.
When he realized that Sword Emperor could be Xianyuan Diao, her attire made her think of the words she had said while crying that night. She thought that he had died and had sealed herself off. She didn't allow anyone to see her eyes, nor hear her voice. When Ling Chen realized this, he felt like his heart was torn apart. These years, he had been with another girl. Diao's feelings for him had never changed, and yet he had fallen in love with another girl. As such, he felt that there was no way for him to face Diao and love her again. Although we've been apart for 13 years, my feelings towards Tia Wu have never changed. I'll use the rest of my life to pay back what I owe you. So, even if you hate me and want to punish me, that's completely fine. Just don't leave me again. I've already lost Ruru, and I don't want to lose you as well.
Ling Chen hugged the Sword Emperor tighter and tighter as he spoke. The Sword Emperor was Xianyuan Diawu. This was something that he was certain about. Ling Chen thought that Xianyuan Diawu had avoided him every time they had met and had left so decisively today because he had broken her heart. After all, for her, who had given up everything for him, seeing him with another girl would have crushed her passionate heart. It would not have been surprising for her love to turn into hatred. When the new city had fallen into crisis, Xianyuan Diawu had come immediately and did her best to protect the city, which meant that she did not completely hate him. Ling Chen had thought that after hearing these words from him, Xianyuan Diawu's heart would soften, and she would no longer be so determined to leave. However, she began to struggle even more so than before.
I'm not Xianyuan Diawu. She's dead. I'm not her.
She desperately struggled as she screamed. The voice still sounded incredibly hoarse, but it now contained a sense of broken-heartedness and despair that could not be covered up. Shadisika silently watched them from Ling Chen's side. From the things Ling Chen had said, she had guessed the relationship between them. Ling Chen's words were warm and sincere, and were enough to make any girl's heart melt. She had thought that the Sword Emperor would give in, but she began to unexpectedly struggle even more. Shadisika raised her face in curiosity, looking at that struggling figure. Suddenly, her eyebrows jumped as a look of deep shock appeared on her face. Her eyes remained fixed on the Sword Emperor for a long time.
Diawu, how could I not recognize you? I'm not her. She already died. 13 years ago, she already died. I'm called Feng Xiaoyu, not Xianyuan Diawu. Diawu.
The Sword Emperor's resistance made Ling Chen feel at a loss as to what to do. Xianyuan Diawu loved him deeply, and even if she resented him after being apart for 13 years, she shouldn't be like this. Ling Chen continued to hug onto the Sword Emperor, not allowing her to escape as he said sorrowfully,
I know I let you down, and I understand that you must hate me, but she doesn't hate you.
The Sword Emperor vigorously shook her head as the cloth covering her face became wetter.
Back then, hearing about your death was the cruelest thing that could happen to her, while finding out that you hadn't died was the happiest thing for her. Regaining what she lost, seeing someone dead come back to life, apart from thanking the heavens, what would she hate you for? She only feels endless gratitude towards that girl called Ruru because she has been with you this entire time. Seeing you and her live happily together, she only feels peace and happiness. She gave up everything for you, and even if she hates the whole world, she would never be able to hate you. But I'm not Xianyuan Diawu, she's really dead. I'm not her.
Ling Chen felt shocked, and gradually lost the strength in his arms. Diawu didn't hate him. Indeed, it had just been him feeling guilty this entire time. With Diawu's gentle personality, no matter what he did, she would not blame him or hate him. Even if she hates the whole world, she would never be able to hate you. Was she really not Diawu? No. She was definitely Diawu. He was completely sure about this. So why?
Are you really not Diawu?
Ling Chen's arms fell powerlessly by his side as he looked at the Sword Emperor. After finally escaping Ling Chen's embrace, the Sword Emperor did not try to leave again and instead resolutely shook her head.
I'm not. Then who are you? I'm called Feng Xiaoyu.
The Sword Emperor tried to suppress the trembling in her voice.
Then do you know who Diawu is to me?
Ling Chen softly asked her.
She's my wife.
Ling Chen spoke incredibly softly and slowly, his eyes filled with warmness. The Sword Emperor's body trembled as her tears fell like rain. Ling Chen looked up, his eyes distant, as if he was speaking to the sky.
13 years ago, Diao Wu hugged me as we were bathed in the moonlight. We sat by the small creek for a long time. She kept comforting me, telling me that I couldn't lose hope in myself and that she would do her best to save my life. In fact, although I was doomed to die, she took out a red string and bound one end to my right hand's pinky finger and the other to her left hand's pinky finger.
Ling Chen's gaze became hazy. He could still remember everything that happened that night clearly. He would never forget until the day he died.
This piece of red string is a symbol that the god of marriage has bound us together. One end is attached to you, and the other end is attached to me. Big brother Tianya, do you know what this means? It means that from now on, I, Xianyuan Diawu, has become Big brother Tianya's wife, from now till forever. Big brother Tianya is my husband, and we'll always be together. No matter what happens, we'll never be separated. I, Xianyuan Diawu, am willing to become Big brother Tianya's wife. We were born on the same date in the same month and year, and I'm willing to die with him on the same date in the same month and year. My entire life will only belong to Big brother Tianya. Heavens, please be the witness of everything I've said. If I go back on any of my words, let me suffer eternal punishment. Please bless Big brother Tianya and myself so that no matter what happens, we can always be together.
Ling Chen repeated the words that Xianyuan Diawu had said. Although 13 years had passed, he still remembered every single word. This was because they were the most beautiful words he had ever heard in his life, and were memories that could never be destroyed. They were what supported him in surviving his time in heaven and hell. The Sword Emperor's arms violently trembled, desperately trying not to cry out loud.
Back then, Diawu was still a child, but she spoke with sincerity that far surpassed her age. She made a promise towards me, who was fated to die. She bound her life, which had just started, to me, someone who could die at any moment. I will never be able to fully return her feelings in my lifetime. To have a wife like this, even if I suffer 10 times more pain and suffering, I'll still thank the heavens.
Ling Chen lowered his head as he looked at the Sword Emperor affectionately, a slight smile on his face.
Please bless Big brother Tianya and myself so that no matter what happens, we can always be together. Those were the words Diawu had said and promised. She'll definitely keep that promise, right? But
The Sword Emperor held her right hand against her chest, sobbing so much that she could barely speak.
Diawu and I have even faced each other's death.
Ling Chen continued to smile as he stretched out his hand and gently hugged the Sword Emperor.
Even death was unable to keep us apart. What can stop us from being together? I'm not dead, and Diawu hasn't died. However, Diawu keeps trying to avoid me. I'm sure that being such a kind girl, Diawu must have a reason for avoiding me. She must be facing some sort of trouble, or something has happened to her, and she's afraid of burdening me. Is that right? And no.
The Sword Emperor shook her head as she weakly tried to stumble away.
Then, is it that Diawu isn't willing to be my wife and be with me? No. It's not like that.
The Sword Emperor's voice became more frantic, sounding even more heartbroken.
If whatever happened to you happened to me, would you want me to leave you or face it together with you? Would me leaving hurt you more, or me facing it together with you hurt you more?
Ling Chen asked.
I.
The Sword Emperor didn't know what to say and couldn't help but sob.
Even death was not able to separate us. Do you really think that this thing, which might be incredibly small, can separate us again? Is that really what you want? Do you want both of us to live in sorrow for the rest of our lives?
Ling Chen asked gently. He slowly released the Sword Emperor and faced her.
If you're determined to say that you're not my Diawu, and that you're not willing to be my wife, you can turn around. But if you are my wife, my Dia Wu, come back to my side.
The air seemed to freeze, and was filled with a sense of sadness. The Sword Emperor's shoulders continuously trembled, and the gray cloth covering her face was completely wet. Finally, under Ling Chen's gentle and longing gaze, the defenses in her heart finally crumbled. To her, it seemed like only this figure that she had yearned for day and night remained.
Big brother! Ling Tian!
This cry was filled with lament as well as countless complex emotions, causing Ling Chen's heart to almost shatter. However, this voice was one of a young woman's. It was no longer the fake voice from before. She leapt towards Ling Chen, grabbing onto him, as she sobbed emotionally, as if her heart had crumbled. Who could understand just how much pain and despair she had felt when she thought that Tian had died? Who could have known just what she had gone through? Who could sympathize with just how joyful, pained, and complicated she felt when she learned that he was still alive? Ling Chen gently placed his hands on her back as he closed his dampened eyes and smiled peacefully. His Dia Wu was finally back. No matter what happened to her, as long as she was willing to come back to him, he didn't care at all. Shadisika also gently smiled, and seemed even happier than Ling Chen. Xianyuan Dia Wu's sobs seemed as if they could shock the heavens and move the earth, as if all of the emotions she had stored within her for 13 years had been released altogether. After crying for a few minutes to the point her voice became hoarse, Ling Chen's clothes became completely wet. Ling Chen continued to gently hug her without speaking or moving, allowing her to let out those feelings. To be able to hug Dia Wu like this again, Ling Chen felt as if he was living in a dream. Finally, Xianyuan Dia Wu, tired from crying, gradually calmed down. She leaned against Ling Chen's chest as she listened to his heartbeat, putting her weight against his body. To her, this was something that could only happen in dreams.
Cried enough now?
Ling Chen patted her back as he lowered his head and smiled. He stretched out his hand and stretched out his hand to touch the cloth covering her face. 13 years, a whole 13 years had passed. He wanted to see just how beautiful Dia Wu would be after 13 years had gone by. Just as he touched the edge, his hand was grabbed by her cloth-wrapped hand in terror.
Dia Wu, can I look at you?
Ling Chen held her hand as he spoke in a soft voice. Xianyuan Dia Wu did not get up off his chest and spoke in an airy voice.
Big brother Ling Tian, after not seeing you for so many years, you become even more attractive. No wonder there are so many pretty girls by your side. But if I became an ugly monster, would you still want me? Ha ha!
Ling Chen laughed and asked,
If I became an ugly monster, would Dia Wu still be willing to be my wife?
Xianyuan Dia Wu immediately nodded.
Of course I would be willing, exactly, my answer is the same as Dia Wu's.
Ling Chen held Xianyuan Dia Wu's small hand and said,
We're husband and wife, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. Even if my Dia Wu became an ugly monster, beggar, quadriplegic, or an unforgivable evildoer, she'll still be my Dia Wu, my wife. No one will be able to replace her within my heart.
Xianyuan Dia Wu's shoulders began to heave again, as the tears that had finally stopped once again poured out again.
Moreover, my Dia Wu was so pretty when she was younger. After growing up, I'm sure she's become a beauty who can topple countries, and not an ugly monster,
Ling Chen said as he smiled. After he said this, he felt Xianyuan Dia Wu's body suddenly shake as a wave of sadness erupted from her body. Ling Chen's heart thumped as a terrifying thought emerged in his mind. Could it be that Dia Wu, could it be that she was avoiding him, because... Devastating beauty.
Dia Wu.
Ling Chen suppressed the terrifying thought he just had as he slowly stretched his hand towards her face, trying to lift the cloth.
After all these years, my Dia Wu has grown up. Can you let me see the grown-up Dia Wu?
No. Xianyuan Diawu grabbed onto Ling Chen's hand, looking both frightened and worried. She lowered her head as she said in sorrow,
"Don't look, it's very ugly, worse than a demon."
For her to say in front of her lover that her face was even worse than that of a demon's, Ling Chen could almost hear Xianyuan Diawu's heart breaking. In that moment, Ling Chen finally understood why Xianyuan Diawu had been avoiding him all this time. He lowered his head as he spoke in his softest and gentlest voice.
"Diawu, what happened to your face?"
Xianyuan Diawu held onto Ling Chen's hand tightly and didn't raise her head. She simply couldn't allow Ling Chen to see her face. She bit her lips and closed her eyes as she softly spoke.
13 years ago, after I heard that you died, I fell into utter despair. I promised to be with you in life and death, so I wanted to fast to death and be with you. However, I am my father's single daughter, and my mother passed away when I was still young. I hadn't repaid my father yet, and it would be too selfish of me to die then. As such, Xianyuan Diawu died and departed with my big brother Ling Tian, and I lived on with a different identity. Afterwards, my only reason for living was to repay my father for all that he had done for me, and live up to the nurturing that the Xianyuan family had provided me with. I dedicated myself to training with my sword, and spent all of my time training. Perhaps it was because my heart had died, and I didn't have anything to distract me. My sword intent progressed incredibly quickly. By the time I was 14, there was no one within the same generation in the Xianyuan family who could compete with me.
When I was 15, because I was improving so quickly, there was no one who could even put up with me in the same generation. The family decided to make me the young master of the Xianyuan family, and I became Long Tianyun's personal bodyguard both in the real world and the virtual world, following him wherever.
Xianyuan Diawu's voice paused for a moment and continued to speak with a slight tremble in her voice.
As someone from the Xianyuan family, how could I know what sort of person Long Tianyun was? He's much more lascivious than most men, and before he was 20, he had toyed with countless women. Since I had to stay by his side, I was afraid that, I used my sword to cut my face tens of times. Don't say any more.
Ling Chen yelled. He used all of his strength to hug Xianyuan Diawu, the pain in his heart suffocating him. He felt as if he was going to burst into tears. When Xianyuan Diawu mentioned that she was chosen to be Long Tianyun's personal bodyguard, he had a bad feeling. From his memories, he remembered that Xianyuan Diawu was incredibly beautiful, and if she stayed by Long Tianyun's side, it was inevitable that he would set his sights on her. When she spoke of the cruel things she did to herself, Ling Chen felt as if he had been struck by lightning. She had cut her own face. A girl's face had been cut tens of times. Tens of gouges, tens of scars would completely ruin her appearance and make her incredibly ugly. She had wanted to maintain her purity for the dead Tianya, and would not allow anyone to taint her. To almost all women, the most important thing to them was their beauty. If a woman's beauty was destroyed, it was almost equivalent to their entire life being destroyed. No ordinary woman wouldn't care about their appearance. Xianyuan Diawu had desperately wanted to meet Ling Chen, but because her looks had been ruined, she didn't have the courage to stand in front of him. She felt that she was no longer good enough to be by his side, and would be a blemish by his side. At the same time, no woman would want their lover to see her looking incredibly ugly. At the very least, if she didn't reunite with him, he would still have that beautiful image of her. Ling Chen immediately realized that his reaction had been quite intense, and he was afraid that it would upset Xianyuan Diawu. He hurriedly calmed himself and held her shoulders as he looked at her.
It's fine, it's all fine. That's all in the past. As long as my Diawu can return to my side, nothing else matters. No matter what my Diawu looks like, you'll still be the most beautiful girl in my heart, forever.
Xianyuan Diawu didn't say anything and continued to grip Ling Chen's hand. She understood Ling Chen's heart, and she understood that his feelings were just the same towards her. However, with her face, a face more terrifying than a demon's, would he really not care at all? Would the people by his side not care at all? Could she not care at all? It was impossible, completely impossible. No matter how deep one's feelings were, when facing an incredibly ugly face, they would naturally feel repulsed and disgusted. This had nothing to do with love. It was something natural for all creatures. Humans could control their emotions, but they couldn't control their nature. The beautiful Xianyuan Diawu and the ugly Xianyuan Diawu could never be the same.
Diawu, can you let me look at you?
Ling Chen had a warm and gentle smile on his face. There was no nervousness or worry on his face, only a sense of heartache and comfort.
Trust me, no matter what Diawu looks like now, I'll still like you now and forever.
No matter how scared she was, or how much she tried to run, she wouldn't be able to hide her face from him forever. Now that they had finally reunited, was there any reason for her to continue hiding her face? Even if she hid it, it wouldn't be able to go back to what it was like before. She absent-mindedly replied. Since Ling Chen had said those things, she couldn't hide her face forever. She raised her face and put her hands on the cloth covering her face. As both her hands trembled, she slowly took off the cloth, as if it took all of the strength in her body. Xianyuan Diawu's face after 13 years was revealed to Ling Chen. In that instant, Ling Chen's pupils couldn't help but contract as his vision became blurry. What he was afraid of wasn't seeing Xianyuan Diawu's destroyed looks, but that when he saw her face, his heart would ache to death. Finally, his vision cleared as Xianyuan Diawu's face was revealed in his eyes, as he stared for a long time. It was a very, very white face, like a piece of white jade. It was even more resplendent than snow under the sunlight. The whiteness of her face was partially because she had covered it up for so many years, but it was also because of her natural looks. Her slim eyebrows were like beautiful crescent moons, and her eyes were clear and deep like a mountain stream. Droplets of tears hung from her long eyelashes, and her cheeks were glossy and tender, as well as slightly red from crying, making her look incredibly beautiful. All of these were arranged perfectly on an equally perfect face. Her long hair was dark and glossy, and fluttered in the wind, making her beautiful white skin seem all the more striking. Her watery eyes looked like the bright stars in the dark night sky, which looked at him with an expression of anxiousness. So beautiful, within all of Ling Chen's emotions, two words floated around in his mind. This incredibly beautiful face reminded him of Xianyuan Diawu's face when she was younger, but was much more beautiful than Ling Chen had imagined. In fact, she was comparable to even Yunmeng Xian.
Am I very ugly and terrifying?
Xianyuan Diawu bit her lips as she said in fright. However, she couldn't tell what Ling Chen was thinking from his expression. No. Ling Chen shook his head and smiled in an incredibly relaxed manner, as if all of the pain and gloom in his heart were swept away by a gust of wind. Ling Chen stretched out his hand and touched Xianyuan Diawu's face, carefully caressing her skin as if she was the most perfect work of art in the world.
My Diawu turned out to be such a devastating beauty after growing up. Big sister's so pretty.
Shadisika also cried out as she gave a cute smile.
It's the first time I've seen such a pretty big sister.
Xianyuan Diawu was stunned. She had thought that Ling Chen's words were meant to be words of comfort, but this little girl, such a young girl, wouldn't be able to say such things with such an expression. Normally, little girls would react negatively to ugly appearances, but this girl did not cry out in shock or fear, and instead praised her. What was going on?
Diawu, you need to believe that there are miracles in this world.
Ling Chen was reluctant to take his hand off Diawu's face. He took out a small mirror from his bag and showed it to Xianyuan Diawu and smiled as he looked at her. Within the mirror was a ridiculously beautiful young woman who was almost too beautiful for words. The instant Xian Yuan Dia Wu looked into the mirror, she was sent into a daze, and after a brief pause she cried out and brought her hands to her face. The girl's face in the mirror was covered by a pair of cloth-wrapped hands. "Is this me? Is this me? Is this me?" Xian Yuan Dia Wu was so emotional that she was at a loss for words, and when she felt around her face, she could not find those scars. Instead, she could only feel smooth, supple skin. Ling Chen saved the mirror as he smiled. "This is a real mirror. Your big brother Tianya bought it for a whole 6 gold coins, so I can confirm it's definitely real. What you're seeing in that mirror is definitely yourself." But why is it like this? Xian Yuan Dia Wu was once again at a loss for words. She was filled with joy and shock, but couldn't believe that this was real. Not the right time or place. Ling Chen hugged Xian Yuan Dia Wu and laughed warmly. "I knew that the heavens would bless such a kind girl like Dia Wu with beauty and happiness. Everything before was only a shattered bubble of ugliness. Ha ha, the reason is quite simple. Look at me. I was almost killed twice at the Long family's residence and suffered hundreds, if not thousands of wounds. I even had tens on my face, but now none of them remain. This was because after many years of special training, my body's constitution changed, and the wounds quickly healed. Since Dia Wu has learned sword manipulation, your sword intent has definitely reached an amazing level. Perhaps after reaching this level, your body's constitution changed as well, healing your body's wounds. If that was possible for me, it's definitely possible for Dia Wu too." Of course, what Ling Chen said wasn't what he was inwardly thinking. Indeed, his wounds had healed extremely quickly because of his body's constitution. However, his body's constitution didn't come from training, but from being bathed in the medicinal baths prepared by the mad scientist in heaven for 3 years. Did Xian Yuan Dia Wu's wounds really disappear without a trace because of her accomplishments in the way of the sword? Ling Chen didn't know, but thought that the chances were unlikely. However, this was the only thing he could think of that could convince both himself and Dia Wu. He himself was the best example of what he had just talked about. "Wu, Wu!" Lying in Ling Chen's embrace, Xian Yuan Dia Wu once again started to cry. Just like that, the mighty and awe-inspiring Sword Emperor openly wept. However, this time her tears were not filled with sadness, but deep shock and joy. She wiped her tears away and confirmed that all of this was real and not just a dream. Ling Chen let out a long breath and looked up as he smiled, feeling that the entire sky had brightened. There were only vast grassy plains beneath them, and there was no one to disturb them. After separating for 13 years, they each talked about what they went through over the past 13 years. Although much time had passed, they were still the same people, and their feelings for each other were still the same as well. Although they were both now 13 years older, they didn't feel like strangers around each other, and only felt happiness and bliss together. "This is just like a dream," Xian Yuan Dia Wu mumbled. She held Ling Chen's hand as she felt an ache in her heart. "You've suffered too much over the years." "No, you've suffered more, and it's all my fault. Back then, if I had believed that you hadn't died, I would have been able to find you 6 years ago," Ling Chen said in self-blame. He had told Xian Yuan Dia Wu about everything, including heaven, hell, the reapers, Shui Rua, Tian, Heart's Dream, to this girl who had not left him even in the face of death and hadn't given up after thinking he had died. What was there for him to hide? "But if it wasn't for that, you wouldn't have met Ruru," Xian Yuan Dia Wu said somewhat mischievously. In front of Ling Chen, she still acted like the girl from 13 years ago. If he hadn't met Ruru, that was something Ling Chen could not imagine or accept. He shook his head, changing the topic as he asked, "Dia Wu, how did your sword intent progress so quickly? Even your father must have been left behind by you, right?" "I don't know either.
Xian Yuan Dia Wu looked perplexed.
Back then, because my heart had died, I desperately trained like a puppet without any stray thoughts. Maybe that's why. Back then, there was still some distance between myself and father, and sword manipulation seemed like just a dream. However, that time at the Long family, I realized that the intruder was you, and after rescuing you, I didn't return to the Long family and the Xianyuan family. I secretly looked for you, wanting to protect you in secret, but I never found you. After hearing that you were safe, I hid away.
After hearing that you were safe, I was so happy that I wasn't able to sleep for a few days. When I couldn't sleep, I would train with my sword. Whenever I trained, I would think about you. That's all I could think of. In fact, sometimes I even forgot that I was training with my sword. When I came back to my senses, I realized that I was still using my sword, but the sword was no longer in my hands, but in the air dancing around. Could this be the attaining enlightenment through passion of the legends?
Ling Chen sighed in amazement.
As one's emotions fuse with their sword intent, the deeper their emotions, the deeper their sword intent will be. The way of the sword is truly remarkable. Perhaps it's like that.
Xianyuan Diawu's face was slightly red as she continued to speak in an affectionate tone.
Afterwards, I continued to train like this. Actually, even if I didn't want to, that's all I could do because I spent every second thinking about you. That's something I would not be able to stop doing. Just like that, my sword intent continued to grow, and now I can simultaneously control 5 swords. My Diawu is not only a good wife, but a true genius as well,
Ling Chen said in amazement.
Hee.
Xianyuan Diawu happily laughed. Without a doubt, this was the happiest day in these recent years. Moreover, this sort of happiness would continue on forever. There were still a few teardrops left on her face, and her snow-white skin looked extremely glossy. What was even more moving were her clear and watery eyes, looking like 2 stars bathed in water. They were extremely bright, and simply blinking could cause one to feel ripples in their heart. Being reunited with her most loved one made Xianyuan Diawu seem even more beautiful, and every smile she gave was an enchanting scene. With this sort of atmosphere and in this sort of place, if Ling Chen didn't know what to do, he would have lived for nothing for the past 20 or so years. He dampened his lips and leaned forward, bringing his face closer to Xianyuan Diawu's. The approaching manly scent caused Xianyuan Diawu's heartbeat to become wild, and before she could think of what to do, her soft lips had already been kissed by Ling Chen. Xianyuan Diawu's body slightly trembled, her cheeks turning extremely red. She opened her mouth, allowing Ling Chen's tongue to delve deeper in her mouth as she shyly avoided his tongue with hers. Xianyuan Diawu's eyes became extremely misty as her long eyelashes trembled, looking extremely alluring. This was not their first time kissing. When they were younger, they would often kiss and touch each other in places when no one else was around, and they were familiar with each other's smell. Very soon, their kiss became more and more passionate. As their tongues intertwined, they felt each other's body temperature rising.
Big brother Tianya, G gentler.
Soon, Xianyuan Diawu was unable to bear it anymore and moaned. This voice sounded heavenly, and was able to awaken any man's bestial side. Ling Chen's lips left Xianyuan Diawu's lips and slid downwards, kissing her jade-like neck. As Ling Chen kissed and licked his way downwards, Xianyuan Diawu felt her body grow weak as her breathing became more erratic. Her eyelashes trembled as she closed her eyes. Her cheeks felt like they were burning, and her ice-cold skin became hotter and hotter. There was no one else here, and this place was quite remote. It was unlikely anyone would pass by, and was a perfect place for them to rekindle their love for each other. Moreover, they had just reunited. It was the perfect time and place. Moreover, they weren't restricted to just expressing their love in mere words. However, the problem was that
Ling Chen, Does this pretty big sister smell nice?
Shadisika blinked as she asked in a clear voice. Ling Chen, who was just about to go further, suddenly froze as he inwardly screamed, "Crap! I forgot about Sha Sha. She was beside us this whole time." While the two of them were stuck together, Sha Sha had been silently standing next to them and watching, making them forget about her existence. Upon realizing that she was right there, the two people shot apart like lightning.
You're bullying me.
Xian Yuan Diawu said with her head lowered, her face extremely red as she embarrassedly looked at Ling Chen. She seemed angry, yet not angry at all, giving her an extremely moving look.
Ahem.
Ling Chen also felt quite awkward and squeezed Xian Yuan Diawu's small hand as he smiled at Shadisika.
That's right. Your big sister Diawu smells very nice. Oh, no wonder Ling Chen likes smelling her so much and even secretly licked her.
Shadisika nodded. Her eyes then lit up as she yelled in a cute voice.
I smell nice as well. Ling Chen can come and smell me and lick me if he wants. Don't just smell that pretty big sister.
Ha ha. Xian Yuan Diawu couldn't help but laugh.
Of course Sha Sha smells the best.
Ling Chen walked over and picked up Sha Sha, giving her a light kiss on her cheeks before bringing her over to Snow Cherry's back. He held Xian Yuan Diawu's hand and said,
Let's go, we should go back now. After leaving for so long, they're probably worried about us.
With Shadisika as a third wheel, they simply couldn't get a good atmosphere going. And going further was even more impossible.
Go back? Go back to where?
Xian Yuan Diawu suddenly felt quite complicated, and those beautiful figures appeared in her mind. Yun Meng Xian, Shao Qi Suer, Li Shao Shui, Mu Bingyao, all of the women by Ling Chen's side were outstanding beauties, and he seemed to possess good relationships with all of them. That was partially why she had left in a hurry earlier.
Of course, I want to introduce my Diawu to my friends.
Ling Chen wrapped his arms around Xian Yuan Diawu and placed her on Snow Cherry's back. After going into her mount form, it was no problem for Snow Cherry to carry 3 people. Ling Chen hugged Xian Yuan Diawu's slim waist and looked forwards.
In the future, Diawu can just be Diawu, not Feng Xiaoyu. In the future, don't wear these clothes anymore. With how beautiful my Diawu is, she should be making all women feel jealous and making all men lose their souls. Ha ha ha.
Ling Chen loudly laughed as Snow Cherry beat her wings and sped off.
Ling Tian City. Ling Chen brought Xian Yuan Diawu and Shadisika back towards the new city where Yun Meng Xian and the others were still waiting. Below, many of the players who had died had returned. They belonged to the Disillusion Alliance, Snow Moon Luan, Battle Alliance, and Skyfall Dynasty. Evidently, they were worried that the Yin Huang Alliance and other attacking factions would attack them once again.
What? Your W wife?
Upon hearing Ling Chen's introduction of Xian Yuan Diawu, everyone, no matter if they were male or female, cried out in shock. Xian Yuan Diawu also froze in shock, but after looking at Ling Chen's smiling face, she felt quite emotional, a look of intoxication in her beautiful eyes, as every part of her body was filled with happiness. The awkwardness and worry from before completely disappeared in an instant, facing all of his friends, calmly smiling, and calling her his wife was even more moving than the most beautiful words and promises. Ling Chen's feelings towards her were completely true, and she was able to feel them completely. From that single word, everything she had done and all of the pain she had suffered were all worth it. Even though we've been apart for 13 years, I'll never give up on the promise we made back then. No matter when, no matter if it's in heaven or hell, no matter if we're at the end of the ocean or the edge of heaven, no matter what sort of snow and sea we have to traverse, as long as you're there, I'll be with you for the rest of my life.
Wife! Wife! But, big brother Ling Tian, how did you suddenly get a wife?
That word shocked the wits out of Xiao-Qi, causing her to stutter as she felt some indescribable emotions from within her. And also, where did this ridiculously pretty girl suddenly come from?
Wife! Big brother Ling Tian's wife!
Su'er had woken up, and she was also sent into shock as she dumbly looked at Xianyuan Diaowu, who was looking at Ling Chen with an expression of bliss on her face. Yun Meng Xian was also completely stunned, unable to say anything. Even Li Xiaoshui was given a big shock, but she immediately gave a meaningful smile. After looking at Xianyuan Diawu's face, the haze within her heart disappeared as she smiled and spoke.
So you two knew each other long before this. If I remember correctly, that year, you were both only 9 years old, right?
Xianyuan Diawu looked at her in shock, wondering how she knew this.
That's right.
Ling Chen smiled and nodded.
Although we weren't able to legally get married, and there were no official records, formal ceremonies, anyone to bear witness, or give their blessings, from then onwards Dia Wu was my wife, and she will be forever. Tianya.
Xianyuan Diawu mumbled, her eyes becoming misty.
9 years old. Are you sure you weren't just playing house? Hey.
Winter of that year laughed. He wasn't very familiar with Ling Tian, and it was his first time meeting him. As such, he didn't know much about his history, so he naturally didn't understand just how shocking it was for him to suddenly have a wife. He looked around and found that the atmosphere was quite strange. Yun Feng and Xiao Qiufeng were both staring wide-eyed. Xiao-Qi and Su'er were completely zoned out with complex expressions, as well as a slight trace of sadness. Even Yun Meng Xian had a strange expression on her face.
Of course we weren't just playing house.
Ling Chen shook his head as he looked at Xianyuan Diawu.
Back then, I contracted the Isrock disease.
Ling Chen's words caused everyone to cry out in shock. Isrock was almost a synonym for the devil, and it was the most terrifying disease in the world. Ling Chen continued.
Back then, everyone cast me aside and avoided me, and locked me in a dark, iron room. Only Dia Wu, she brought me out from that room and tightly hugged me. She bound a red string around our fingers, vowing to become my wife and to be with me in life and death.
Hearing this, everyone's heart trembled, and the way they looked at Xianyuan Diawu completely changed. Even the slight hostility within Xiao-Qi and Su'er's eyes disappeared and was replaced by awe, respect, gratitude, and goodwill. How many girls in the world could do such a thing? A girl like this should be pitied by the heavens and receive all the blessings in the world.
Sorry,
Winter of that year said in shame. He had just casually made a joke, but he felt that his joke had offended Xianyuan Diawu's sincere feelings.
Big sister, you're so amazing,
Xiao-Qi said emotionally.
Isrock. I know, the doctor must have misdiagnosed big brother Ling Tian, right? But if this big sister is your wife, why weren't you together all these years? These years you were, after the night we became husband and wife, we were split apart and only reunited today. It has been 13 years,
Ling Chen said as he smiled. He had spoken briefly, but no one could imagine just what the two of them had been through in the past 13 years. Luckily, the paths of their fates had brought them together again.
Chi, there's something that your big brother Ling Tian didn't tell you,
Li Xiaoshui said as she smiled.
You've seen this pretty big sister before. In fact, we all have not too long ago. We've seen her before? I don't think so.
Xiao-Qi thought back, but she couldn't think of where she had seen her before. With such beauty, anyone would not be able to forget her. Moreover, it was not just Xiao-Qi, but everyone else also had a look of confusion on their faces as they tried to remember this girl. Ling Chen looked at Li Xiaoshui and helplessly said,
Actually, she's the Sword Emperor. Sword Emperor?
Everyone's eyeballs almost fell to the ground as their expressions became comical. This girl was the Sword Emperor, who had shaken all of China, was famous worldwide, was cold and emotionless, who never spoke and only knew how to kill. The Sword Emperor, who could break through tens of thousands of players? What sort of joke was this? Could this joke be any more ridiculous? When Xian Yuan Diaowu showed her name, Feng Xiaoyu, everyone felt as if their mind had exploded. The treatment beautiful women received was always different. This was even more so when someone had immense status and power, not to mention the identity Ling Tian's wife. No matter what sort of circle she entered, she would always be passionately welcomed. Xian Yuan Diawu's status as Ling Tian's wife made Shao Qi and Su'er feel both admiration and jealousy. But once they found out she was the Sword Emperor, stars of worship appeared within their eyes. The invincible Sword Emperor, who had been at the top of the heaven rankings for so long, had actually been a woman who was only a few years older than themselves. This caused them to feel a sense of glory. However, Su'er felt a bit complicated. She had used her Heaven Secret's eyes to look at the Sword Emperor's true appearance before, and saw a face destroyed by gashes and scars, which made her feel terrified. Now, seeing the incredibly beautiful Diaowu, she couldn't help but think to herself,
"Looks like the Heaven Secret's eyes isn't foolproof."
From the late action of the Yin Huang Alliance and the other attacking factions, it seemed that they had fallen into complete chaos, and would not be able to attack again within a short period of time. Moreover, they had lost all dignity and reputation, and most of them were most likely scared out of their wits. Even if they had the ability to, they probably didn't have the guts to attack again. Li Xiaoshui took down the platform and asked the fairies to take down the wall of vines. The group of people came to the gates of the new city, feeling the aura from the new city. Looking at the city they had protected, everyone felt the same throbbing in their hearts. Even the Skyfall dynasty, which had originally planned to take down the new city, felt the same way. After all, the new city had been protected at the cost of their entire army.
Yun Feng, Alliance Master Shao, and the three Heavenly Kings, thank you all for your help and support. After the new city is completed, if you wish, there will always be a place for you here. We also welcome our friends Winter and 100 Miles to stay in the new city. I'm sure you won't be disappointed by what we have here,"
Ling Chen said sincerely and with great confidence. This city had been constructed by the dwarves, and it was very close to the fairy forest, which was filled with pure nature energy. He could already see the future growth and development of the new city. Yun Feng nodded.
"I'll move the entire Disillusion Alliance here. Since we burned all of our bridges, the Disillusion Alliance will be leaving the Yin Huan Alliance. As for Long Tian Yun's revenge, considering how long our Yun family has existed for, even if they wanted to do anything to us, it wouldn't be so easy."
Xiao Qiufeng looked at Shao Qi and expressionlessly nodded.
"The Battle Alliance will also come. Today, the Battle Alliance has completely left the Yin Huan Alliance. We'll ask Big Sister what she thinks,"
Skyfall calmly said. Even now, he still did not know why Gu Qinghan had asked them so resolutely to protect the new city. What he needed to do now was to help the Skyfall dynasty recover from its losses. Moreover, they could be annihilated at any moment. Thinking to there, he heavily sighed inwardly. Against the Sky and Judging Sky were feeling the same way. Moving to the new city would further the new city's fame and reputation, and would help the new city. That's what it seemed like now. Not too long in the future, they would know just what sort of an honor it would be to move to this new city. The new city's development would greatly exceed anyone's expectations.
"That's right, Meng Xian. What's this new city called?"
Ling Chen turned and asked. That day, Li Xiaoshui had told him that the new city's name was Ling Tian City, not Meng Xian City or Heartstream City. This caused him to feel quite moved. However, he wanted confirmation from Yunming Xian's own mouth. In just a short while, Yunming Xian, Xiaoqi and Su'er had become quite close with Xianyuan Diawu. The four girls were stuck together, talking and laughing with each other. They seemed incredibly close, as if they were sisters who had known each other for many years, making Ling Chen feel dumbfounded. Before, he had sensed some hostility between the girls for an obvious reason. However, he could only act dumb, but in just this short period of time, they had become quite close. Women were creatures that men would never be able to understand.
Ling Tian City,
Yunming Xian replied as she looked at him.
Shouldn't it be called Heartstream City?
Back when Ling Chen had given Yunming Xian the city creation token, he had mentioned that name. Yunming Xian smiled.
I think that Ling Tian City suits it more. I hope that this new city, which has so much hope placed in it, can reign under the heavens like you and become one of the greatest existences in all of the Mystic Moon world. It won't just belong to Heartstream, but to all players. Ling Chen gave her a deep look as a look of sincere admiration appeared in Li Xiaoshua's eyes.
Man-made God, the city gates were opened, and the fairies and dwarves charged out as they yelled with joy. At the front, Chief Dillow's face was so emotional that it was completely red, and Chief Greenwood and Granny Witherwood were grinning. Almost the entire city was filled with cheers. This battle had lasted for more than 10 hours, and they had anxiously spent each minute and second in fear. After all, this new city contained their hope and future. Crisis after crisis had been averted, each more perilous than the previous. Miracles had happened time and time again, causing countless waves within their hearts during these 10 or so hours. Finally, Ling Chen's return had completely resolved the crisis, causing them to uncontrollably yell out with joy.
Brother Ling Tian, it's great that you're back. You've once again saved us. I'm becoming more and more certain that you're someone sent by the heavens to save us,
Chief Dillow said emotionally. All of the dwarves' gazes towards Ling Chen became incredibly passionate. Ling Chen's position in their hearts had reached an unprecedented height.
Splendidly done.
Greenwood's gaze passed over each person, looking extremely impressed. He had watched the battle from the very beginning, and he knew just how much of a miracle it was for them, who had 1/5 of their enemies' numbers, to defend the new city. Finally, his gaze rested on Ling Chen as he said earnestly,
We haven't seen you for some time, and you've almost become a new person. Indeed, you're no ordinary person at all.
Beside him, Kair happily flew toward Xiaoqi and Su'er and the others. She hovered around them, her smile like a blooming flower. Ing Shui stood beside Granny Witherwood, a calm expression on her face. It seemed as if there was a layer of frost that could never be melted on her face. The joyous celebrations didn't continue for too long. The fairies and dwarves returned to their hard work. After surviving the attack, their passion and motivation had been raised to the extreme, and everyone worked with all their strength. Sweat covered their bodies, but relaxed and happy smiles covered their faces. The 3 heavenly kings left in a hurry, and Yun Feng and Xiao Qiu Feng also left together. They needed to reorganize after that battle. The girls dragged Xianyuan Diawu off to ask about Ling Chen's past, as Ling Chen had never told them much about his childhood before. As such, they decided to learn these things from Xianyuan Diawu. Of course, they were also interested in her identity as the Sword Emperor. Shadisika and Kair played together, but Shadisika continuously stole glances at Ling Chen, as if she was afraid that he would disappear if she let her sights off him.
Elder Dita, here are 2 spatial stones. Can you please help me make another 500 spatial orbs? You can keep whatever's left to make spatial items and teleportation channels in future.
Ling Chen gave the 2 spatial stones he had obtained from the East Ocean continent to Elder Dita. Anyone who used spatial orbs would form a dependency on them. Returning to the new city had used his last spatial orb, and now Ling Chen did not have a single one left.
Heavens! You obtained another 2 of these legendary items. This is simply incredible.
Elder Dita took them, as he explained in shock and awe. What's more, these 2 spatial stones were much bigger than the 2 from before. He patted his chest as he said,
"Leave this to me. The 500 spatial orbs will be ready by noon tomorrow at the latest. Right, there's also these things. Use them where appropriate. I'm sure they should all be things you're interested in."
Ling Chen took out all of the weird and wonderful things he had obtained on his journey, which soon piled up into a small mountain. With Xiao Hui's sensitivity to treasures, wherever Ling Chen went, he would always find the treasures in the area. During his 2 months in the East Ocean continent, he had spent most of his time near the celestial Cherry Valley, where the moon god Aura had attracted and given birth to many treasures. All of them were discovered by Xiao Hui and fell into Ling Chen's bag. Any treasure that Xiao Hui could be bothered detecting was a treasure of treasures, and some of them were extremely rare metals and materials.
My God!
Elder Dita felt his head spin. He almost fainted from the shock and happiness he felt.
What am I seeing? I can't believe my eyes.
Elder Dita leapt onto the mountain of treasures, his body threatening to collapse under how much he was shaking. Good materials were like their lives to dwarves, and seeing so many treasures heaped in front of him, he felt like he was in heaven. Smelling the unique smells from the metals and other materials, and looking at the high-grade materials that he had only read about in books, Elder Dita almost went mad.
Azure Cloudstone, Jade Bloodglass, Dark Secret Gold, Overlord Rock, Starwood. My God, this is chilling crystal chalcedony. This is chilling crystal chalcedony, which only exists in records, something that even our progenitor has never seen before.
Elder Dita continued to mutter to himself, sometimes crying out, wishing that he could bury himself in these treasures. Soon, he was unable to hear anything Ling Chen said. Ling Chen tapped his nose, and could only walk away. Leaving these treasures here with the dwarves was undoubtedly the best thing to do. As for what they could be used for, that was what the dwarves specialized in. Of course, Ling Chen hadn't given them everything. He had kept some of the chilling crystal chalcedony because not only was it a top-grade material, but it could also instantly increase one's level.
Xiao Shui, what's going on with the Skyfall dynasty?
Ling Chen pulled Li Xiao Shui aside and asked her the question that had been on his mind the entire time. Li Xiao Shui did not directly answer. She swept back some loose strands of hair as she said,
"Come meet someone with me tomorrow." "Who is it?" "Gu Qinghan."
Li Xiao Shui smiled.
"Her? What does it have to do with her?"
Ling Chen felt quite shocked. He had long since heard of Gu Qinghan, but had only seen her once. It was that time when he had gone to visit Li Xiao Shui, and the elegant aura that she gave off left a deep impression on him. However, he had only briefly seen her, and there was nothing between them.
In this world, the only person who could order the 3 heavenly kings to take their Skyfall dynasty on a suicide mission is Gu Qinghan. Not even their father would be able to do such a thing. As for her reason, you'll know tomorrow when you meet her.
Li Xiao Shui folded her arms around her chest as she smiled lightly. This was something she often did. Ling Chen frowned and thought before asking,
"Does she know my real-life identity and where I'm staying?" "Yes,"
Li Xiao Shui replied.
"However, don't worry. She's more intelligent than any other woman. Since she was willing to give up the entire Skyfall dynasty to help you, she naturally wants to possess a good relationship with you. How could she expose you? From how I see it, she's probably like me found some worth in you. I'll come pick you up tomorrow afternoon. Remember not to go out."
After giving Ling Chen a coquettish gaze, Li Xiao Shui turned around as she faintly smiled and walked away. There was a look within her eyes that made her seem like she could see through everything in the world. What would the situation be like tomorrow? After Li Xiao Shui left, winter of that year and 100 miles of ice, who had been waiting for a long time, finally found an opportunity to come over to Ling Chen's side.
Ling Tian, do you have anything to say to us?
In front of Ling Chen, winter of that year was not as frivolous and flippant as he usually was. He had a complicated expression, and 100 miles of ice also looked quite serious. Both of his sword-like eyes were piercing into Ling Chen.
What year did the two of you enter heaven?
Ling Chen frowned as he coldly asked. This question caused winter of that year and 100 miles of ice's pupils to contract.
So you really were somewhere from there. I never thought that after that explosion, apart from us, there were other survivors.
Winter of that year said, while trying to suppress his emotions, though his heart rate still sped up. He and 100 miles of ice were both humans, but they were different from other people. They were humans who no longer belonged in the world. They only had each other in this vast world, and only they knew the feeling of loneliness, inferiority, and exclusion that they felt. Now that they had suddenly found someone in the same boat as them, they felt delighted and felt a sense of closeness.
Answer me first, what year? Ling Chen asked. Winter of that year looked at 100 miles of ice and didn't hide anything as he replied.
It was 10 years ago, or more precisely 10 years and 4 months ago.
What about you?
10 years ago?
Ling Chen muttered to himself. A look of astonishment flashed in his eyes. That was when he had left heaven. He had spent 3 years and 4 months in heaven, 3 years and 5 months in hell, and after killing Instructor Hell, 7 years had passed. In total, it had been 13 years and 6 months since he had been taken to heaven. These two people had entered heaven 2 months after he had left.
I was there earlier than you,
Ling Chen replied.
I was taken there 13 years ago, 13 years and 6 months ago. 13 years ago?
Winter of that year and 100 miles of ice were shocked. A look of confusion surfaced on their faces, after which their expression suddenly changed.
You're Adam.
Winter of that year's eyes widened as he yelled.
You know about me?
Ling Chen was quite calm upon hearing the name Adam. To anyone, the things that happened there would be incredibly shocking, and even more so to the victims. They couldn't reveal any of this to the public, or countless problems would arise for them. However, to these two people who had gone through the same things as him, people he felt quite familiar with, he didn't hide anything.
Adam, Eve? How could we not know about those names?
Winter of that year laughed. Although he was laughing, the laugh was one full of grief.
No wonder why you're so strong, to the point that you're many times stronger than the boss and myself. No wonder why you could defeat the Sword Emperor so easily and single-handedly destroy millions of troops. So you're not a man-made god like us, but the mad scientist's perfect creation. Man-made god?
Ling Chen frowned.
That's right, man-made gods. The boss and I are both man-made gods. Sounds cool and domineering, right? Do you know what man-made gods are and how they came about?
Winter of that year's smile became more and more twisted. Behind him, 100 miles of ice silently closed his eyes, giving off an aura of grief.
Adam and Eve were perfect creations that the mad scientist screamed about every day, and they were the greatest works of his life. He madly told us that when the time was ripe and he removed the restrictions on Adam and Eve's brain capacities, they would become true demigods. 2 perfect demigods should have been enough, but that madman still wanted more demigods to become his powerful slaves. As such, he started to create us, the man-made gods, man-made gods. Adam, do you know why you have a strange feeling when you come near us?
Ling Chen.
The boss and I thought that we had met another man-made god, but we never expected that he had met the Lord of Gods. This is because we were made by being modified by your blood and genes. In other words, we're only lowly life forms given our powers by your blood and genes.
Ling Chen.
A miracle that came silently.
Using my blood and genes? How's that possible?
Ling Chen frowned.
To normal people, that's indeed impossible, but that person is the mad scientist. He was able to clone your blood and genes, and given enough time, he could probably even clone you.
Winter of that year said, as he breathed raggedly while in a strangely stimulated state. Seeing that the person in front of him was the person whose blood and genes had been forcibly instilled inside him to make him a man-made god, his memories were awakened, making him feel incredibly complicated emotions. Cloning blood and genes. Ling Chen knew that if it was the mad scientist, he would be able to do it. There was almost nothing that was impossible for him. Just like Instructor Hell, who had seemed to rise from the dead, he had been turned into a cyborg by the mad scientist. A monster that only appeared in movies, but was much more perfect than those in movies.
Why did he use my blood and genes? Because the 4 successful subjects at the end were all male, and you were stronger than Eve overall. So of course the mad scientist would choose you.
Winter of that year replied as his entire body trembled slightly.
The mad scientist instilled by blood and genes inside you mainly to alter your body's constitution, right? Were your mind's thoughts and memories affected in any way?
Ling Chen asked as he looked at them.
No, that's good.
Ling Chen nodded as he said in a serious tone.
Since they weren't affected, you're still you, not a derivative product. If a person's mind was altered, they would have lost themselves. While if a person's mind is still theirs, even if their entire body has been altered, they will still be themselves. It's most likely that you were given those things because you lost too much blood, and that blood has long since fused with your bodies, so it has nothing to do with me anymore. Genes are the same.
Ling Chen's words caused Winter of that year to pause in surprise. This entire time, he had felt humiliated that a stronger person's blood and genes had been instilled within him to make him stronger. He felt that he was no longer himself, and his superhuman abilities were also because of another person's blood and genes, making him a mere derivative product. He felt that he was both pitiful and laughable. However, hearing Ling Chen's words, why did he suddenly feel that it was no big deal? He suddenly felt much better. Ling Chen ignored the changes in their expressions and continued speaking.
Come to speak of it, how did you escape from there?
Ling Chen had asked how they had escaped, not left. Ling Chen wouldn't believe that the mad scientist had let them go out of compassion unless he had truly gone mad.
6 years ago, we found a rare opportunity to blow up the island.
Thinking back to that day, a look of delight appeared on Winter of that year's face.
Since we couldn't just escape, we decided to take the mad scientist down with us. On that day, the entire island, including the mad scientist's equipment, samples, medicines, metals, and diseases, were all completely blown up. The heavens were kind and allowed the boss and I to live on, though I lost consciousness for 6 years and only woke up half a year ago. Blew up?
Ling Chen raised his eyebrows as he went deep into though. Back then, after killing Instructor Hell, he and Eve had returned to heaven to assassinate the mad scientist. However, they found that heaven was gone. It turned out that it had been blown up by these two people. On the vast ocean, the evidence of the explosion was quickly swallowed by the boundless waves.
However, these years, the boss and I always had a bad feeling.
Speaking to their, Winter of that year's body trembled.
A bad feeling that the mad scientist wasn't dead. This was because every time the boss and I thought of the mad scientist, our bodies would grow cold. It wasn't just out fear towards him, but maybe a warning from our winds. Adam, with your mental energy, I'm sure that you should know that foresight and warnings aren't just fictional things.
Ling Chen snapped out of his thoughts as he looked at them.
Your guess was correct. Indeed, the mad scientist has not died. Not too long ago, I met another of the mad scientist's creations. In front of that creation, I was almost unable to fight back, and I was almost killed by him. What?
Expressions of shock appeared on Winter of that year and 100 miles of ice's faces.
Not dead. He's not dead.
Winter of that year's body started to violently tremble, as his face instantly became incredibly pale. Guessing that the mad scientist wasn't dead and receiving confirmation were completely different things. Anyone who had been to heaven before would know just how terrifying the mad scientist was. His body was incredibly thin, and would huff and puff from just walking. However, he was more terrifying than even the most horrifying demon in the world. Although so many years had passed, no matter if it was winter of that year, 100 miles of ice, or even Ling Chen, they would always shudder when thinking about the mad scientist.
Not only is he not dead,
Ling Chen's voice became heavier.
The year you destroyed that island, it was definitely arranged by the mad scientist. What do you mean?
Winter of that year felt quite shocked.
The mad scientist is terrifyingly intelligent. I'm sure you know this already. Over the years, tens of thousands of people fell into his hands, but not a single one of them were able to escape from him. And yet, you were able to find and detonate a bomb. Moreover, that island contained equipment that was ahead of Earth's technology by hundreds of years, and all of the satellite signals around it were scrambled. All of the ships that came near the island would be redirected, and all of the planes that would fly over it would suddenly change course. In other words, if the mad scientist hadn't allowed it, it would have been impossible to reach the island. On that undiscoverable island, why would he have a bomb that could destroy the entire island? What would he create it for? Apart from that island, what would he want to blow up?
Upon hearing this, Winter of that year's body chilled. Indeed, he had found the bomb quite easily, and had felt incredibly lucky. He occasionally wondered whether this was part of the mad scientist's plan. However, because so much of the mad scientist's hard work was gathered on that island, he couldn't see why the mad scientist would want to blow up that island. However, upon hearing Ling Chen say this, he felt more and more certain that this was the truth. His lips trembled as he asked,
That's impossible, right? Why would the mad scientist?
Ling Chen had already guessed the reason. He spoke succinctly.
The reason is quite simple. Back then, he must have used some method to discover that Eve and I defeated his only comrade, and found out that Eve and I escaped from his control. He once said that Eve and I were his only two creations that could make him feel fear. As such, he became scared upon learning that we had escaped his mental control.
We knew the way to get onto the island, and had sufficient power to kill him. As such, he had to escape. However, he couldn't bring away everything on the island, nor could he allow anyone to discover the island. As such, he decided to blow up the island through you. This was because if you did it, it could create the illusion of him being killed. Moreover, the time you guys blew up the island matches up with the time we killed his comrade. By the time Eve and I prepared to go back to kill him, the island was gone.
Winter of that year and 100 miles of ice's faces became ashen. After hearing that the mad scientist wasn't dead, they felt as if a gigantic rock weighing thousands of kilograms was weighing down on their hearts. Unless the mad scientist truly died, he would remain as a shadow in their hearts that they would never be able to erase. Winter of that year deeply breathed in as he asked,
Did you find the mad scientist after that?
No. Ling Chen shook his head as he frowned.
As long as he doesn't show himself, I'm sure that no one in the world will know where he is. However, what I'm sure of is that right now, he's not carrying on man-made God experiments.
The mad scientist's body was extremely weak. He was a monster who worshipped knowledge and intelligence, but he disregarded physical strength completely. All of Ling Chen's physical training had come from Instructor Hell. Instructor Hell had almost been killed by him and Eve, and he had fallen into the ocean. Although he hadn't died, he had barely survived and needs a few years to recover. During that time, there was no one to help the mad scientist find more experimental subjects. However, it was certain that the mad scientist was not lazing around. Ling Chen and Eve had escaped from his control, but from his personality, he definitely wouldn't give up just like that. However, after all these years, he still hadn't reappeared. The only possibility was that he was carrying out an even more important experiment or plan. Since we can't find him, we'll have to wait for him to come back. I'm sure we'll find him again someday, Ling Chen said as his eyes flashed. Winter of that year looked at 100 miles of ice as he bitterly smiled. You might meet him again and kill him, but boss, and I won't have that opportunity. Why is that? Ling Chen asked. I don't know what sort of methods the mad scientist used, as well as how many strange and rare materials he used to change your body. The molecules in your blood are more volatile than fire, and aren't something that normal humans can endure. If a normal person was injected with even a bit of your blood, within a few minutes, they would be dead. The mad scientist used many cruel methods to create 4 successful experiments, but the success came at a price. Each of those 4 successful experiments only had a maximum of 10 years of lifespan remaining. The boss and I still have 1 year. At the same time, our senses were damaged. I lost my sense of smell and taste. In my world, there are no fragrances and delicious foods. As for the boss, he lost much of his verbal abilities, and he can't even say a complete sentence. Moreover, he lost his sense of touch, coldness, heat, pain, itchiness. Even if you stabbed him with 100 knives, or threw him into fire, he wouldn't feel any pain. They had never told anyone any of this apart from Ling Chen, because there was nobody else to tell. Only they knew the pain of losing their senses. Ling Chen! The snow-white Shadisika left Ling Chen's embrace for too long, and couldn't help but come over. She grabbed onto Ling Chen's hand as she smiled sweetly. Are you talking about something fun? The cute Kyer said that there's a big forest over there that's very pretty. Can you take me there to play? Okay. That place is called the Fairy Forest. I'm sure you'll like it. Facing Shadisika's request, Ling Chen simply couldn't refuse. His gaze fell on Winter of that year and 100 miles of ice's faces as he smiled and said, There's no such thing as absolutes in the world, and I'm sure there's a way. Out of the people I brought out from there, 2 of them specialize in medicine and have equipment that the mad scientist made. Maybe they'll be able to find a way to restore your bodies. As such, if you have time, come to Suhang City and I'll ask them to try. Winter of that year and 100 miles of ice's eyes lit up. If it was a normal doctor, even if it was the most reputable doctor in the world, they would refuse. However, when Ling Chen mentioned the equipment that the mad scientist had made, although the mad scientist was terrifying, everything that came from him was incomparable to the things on Earth. This gave them a faint sense of hope. Really? Then thank you so much. The boss and I will come to Suhang as soon as possible. Winter of that year emotionally said as he rubbed his hands together. Ling Chen slightly nodded as he smiled. I can't guarantee that we'll be successful, but even if we do succeed, you don't have to thank me. I heard from Xiao Shui and the others that because of a promise, you stood guard in front of the Azure Forest village for a few months. If it wasn't for you, the new city might have been destroyed already. For you to keep that promise and be so loyal, I consider you to be true men who are worthy of respect. As such, I'll do my best to repay you. Sha, let's go! Sha excitedly nodded and happily held Ling Chen's hand. After taking a few steps, she looked back at Winter of that year and 100 miles of ice. Adam, he's actually Adam. After Ling Chen left, Winter of that year patted his chest and let out a breath. I never thought that Adam would be Chinese, nor did I think we would ever meet him. Fate is such a strange thing. Achoo! 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 What's this smell? It's so sweet. Smell. I can smell again.
Winter of that year rushed towards 100 miles of ice, his hands tightly grabbing onto him as tears surfaced in his eyes.
I can smell again. I can really smell again. It's true. It's true.
Facing Winter of that year's mad yelling, 100 miles of ice's expression froze. He stared at Winter of that year's face before looking down to where Winter of that year was grabbing him. In his excitement, Winter of that year had used too much force when grabbing him, making him feel some pain. Pain.
It hurts.
He only said 2 words, and couldn't say any more. He basked in this pain, savoring it because he had not experienced it in so many years. To them, today was a miraculous day. The heavens had filled their lives with cruelty, and yet it had suddenly become compassionate, returning what it had taken away from them. These things, which were things that normal people always had, were things that they didn't even dare to dream about regaining. The worlds aligned silently.
Ling Chen, there are so many pretty big sisters by your side. They're all very nice, and will be very nice to Sha as well. I feel that they all really like Ling Chen. Why do you say that? It's just a feeling, but I'm extremely confident in my feeling, just like how I knew Ling Chen would come to save me.
Shadisika's lips curved upwards into a smile that could insta-kill Ling Chen every time.
Looks like they all think decently of me, ha ha, ha.
Ling Chen awkwardly laughed. He felt that the like that Sha was talking about wasn't just how little kids liked each other. Suddenly, Chiyu's voice suddenly sounded out in Ling Chen's mind.
Little master, you still haven't given me an answer about this little girl. Where did you pick up this strange and pretty little girl? It looks like you really like her. Don't tell me that little master's a lolicon. Email protected, $% I wanted to ask you about her.
Ling Chen automatically ignored the latter half of Chiyu's sentence as he asked in his mind.
In your memories, was there anyone who was completely white, including their hair and eyebrows like Sha? Indeed, there were,
Chiyu replied after thinking.
In the ancient times, there was a high-grade type of creature called the Mystic Soul Ice Fox. After they reached the Saint Destroyer grade, their human form would be completely snow white, including their eyes, just like this little girl. However, she doesn't have the aura of a beast clan, so I don't think it's that. The only other clan I can think of is the White Phoenix clan.
White Phoenix clan. Is it a type of phoenix? Of course not. Back in the ancient times, the human race wasn't so simple. The White Phoenix clan was like the Dwarf clan. They were both humanoid races. The White Phoenix people were snow white and worshipped phoenixes. There were not many of them, and they lived in the far north. When standing in the snow, they almost merged with their surroundings. After the Phoenix clan went extinct, the White Phoenix clan also disappeared, most likely going extinct as well. The only clans that fit this little girl's appearance are those 2 clans. Sha's definitely not a beast. So could she be from the White Phoenix clan?
Ling Chen wondered.
You should at least tell me where you found her,
Chiyu said slowly. Ling Chen nodded as he replied.
Do you remember the mysterious door I told you about at the summit of the Godchild Peak? After killing the white tiger, I obtained the 3rd key. After putting all the keys in their respective holes, I was sucked into the door and then...
Ling Chen suddenly had an intense feeling that he couldn't tell her the entire truth. This feeling came very suddenly, which made him feel quite strange. However, this sensation became stronger and stronger, making him feel that if he told the whole truth, a terrible catastrophe would happen.
Afterwards, I saw Sha. She was sleeping and woke up when I touched her. Apart from Sha, there was nothing else. Since I woke her up, and there was no one else inside there, I decided to bring her out.
Just like that, an incredibly long story had been but short. He didn't mention the vast, dark world, the lunar scourge's attraction to something, the blue crystal ball, the world within, or the things Sha said to him. He didn't tell Qiyu any of that. Although the feeling was quite strange, Ling Chen couldn't go against it. Could it be a warning from his mental energy? Ling Chen wondered. He trusted his intuition and gut feelings and did not resist the feeling. As such, he did not tell Qiyu everything that had happened.
So it's like that? That reminds me of a long-lost time magic formation,
Qiyu said uncertainly.
Time magic formation?
It was the first time Ling Chen had heard of such a thing.
The time magic formation is an extremely high-grade magic formation that can affect time. Once the formation is created, it can cause the time within it to slow down or even stop. The effects are only cancelled when a living being enters it from the outside. Activating this sort of formation is even more difficult than climbing to the sky, and they are usually used to store incredibly important things to prevent them from decaying or dying. They can also be used to protect important people.
Qiyu slowly explained.
You mean?
Ling Chen somewhat understood.
From what we know, it's quite likely that Sha is from the White Phoenix clan. She looks the same as the White Phoenix clan I know of, and although the White Phoenix clan's people worship phoenixes, which is a sovereign of fire, they love the cold and always lived in extremely cold places. You discovered Sha at the summit of the Godchild Peak, where the temperature is extremely low, and yet Sha seemed fine. This matches with her being a member of the White Phoenix clan.
My guess is that the White Phoenix clan faced an extremely powerful enemy that was trying to kill them all. In order to preserve their White Phoenix clan's bloodline, they used a time magic formation to seal Sha at the summit of the Godchild Peak to keep her safe. Many years later, after their enemy was gone, and the name of the White Phoenix clan forgotten, Sha would be able to escape once someone brought her out. Because of the time magic formation, as long as the formation was not broken, she would never grow old or die. That way, the White Phoenix clan would be able to rise again. It's not the first time a clan used this sort of method to preserve their bloodline. Oh, so it's like that.
Ling Chen nodded. However, within his heart, he knew that Qiyu's guess was most likely not correct. Sha definitely wasn't within a time magic formation. Since Qiyu's premise was incorrect, her conclusion was also incorrect. However, Ling Chen nodded and did not rebut her, and instead felt a desire to immediately change the topic.
Ding!
Ling Chen's communication device sounded out. After returning to the new city, Ling Chen finally turned on his communication device again. He raised his wrist and saw the name Tian. Tian was calling him from the real world. Just as Ling Chen was going to answer the call, Tian hung up. Ling Chen felt a bit surprised, but quickly realized that Tian was worried that she would disturb him. Very soon, a voice message came through.
Big brother, the big sister said that you're back. You haven't logged off or eaten for nearly 2 days. You'll starve to death at this rate. Hurry and finish whatever you're doing and immediately log off. If you don't come back before dinner, I'll eat all of it by myself and I'll draw 3 big turtles on your face.
Ling Chen couldn't help but laugh and feel a bit of heartache. After moving to the Bamboo Sea Wonderland with Tian, it was the first time he hadn't logged off for such a long time. Moreover, because of the special circumstances, he hadn't been able to tell Tian beforehand. She was probably worried sick. After putting away his communication device, Ling Chen put his arm around Shidisika's shoulder as he said,
Sha, we'll stop here for today. I'll take you to the new city. Is Ling Chen going to log off?
Shidisika asked as she smiled.
You know what logging off is?
Ling Chen felt quite surprised.
Of course I know. Big sisters Chi and Su told me about it. I know that Ling Chen is a player, and like Sha, belongs to another world. Logging on allows you to come to this world, and logging off allows you to go back to your own world.
The girl spoke with a smile that was as clear as a freshwater fountain, looking as beautiful as a flower. Ling Chen let out a small sigh of relief. Since she knew, he didn't have to do any extra explaining. He held Shasha's little hand as he said,
I need to log off now, so I'll take you to the new city. There are many pretty big sisters, as well as Kair, who can play with you. I don't want to.
However, Shasha shook her head, her eyes flashing as she looked at Ling Chen.
I don't want to play with them. I just want to be with Ling Chen. Wherever Ling Chen goes, I'll go with him. If Ling Chen is going to log off, I'll log off with him. But I can't take Shasha when I log off,
Ling Chen said, feeling a headache coming. It seemed that Shasha didn't truly understand what logging off meant.
Don't care. Don't care. I don't want to be apart from Ling Chen. I want to log off with Ling Chen. You said that since you took me out from there, you would take responsibility and wouldn't abandon me.
Shadisika continued to shake her head as she pouted with her pink lips, looking extremely wronged.
Then, does Shasha know how to log off?
Ling Chen felt quite complicated.
Oh, of course I know. As long as Ling Chen holds my hand when logging off, that'll be enough.
Shadisika's eyes danced with light as she spoke confidently. Her small hands grabbed onto Ling Chen as if she was afraid he would suddenly run off.
All right, let's make a deal then.
Hearing Shasha say this, Ling Chen formed a plan in his mind.
I'll hold Shasha's hand while logging off. If it works, I'll bring Shasha with me every time I log off. If it doesn't work, then Shasha needs to be good and stay here until I come back and can't go anywhere else, all right?
There weren't any monsters in the fairy forest, so Shasha would be perfectly safe here. Shasha's cute eyes lit up as she nodded.
Okay. You have to keep your promise.
In that case, Ling Chen held Shasha's little hand and stood straight as he prepared to log off.
Shasha, it's starting now.
The world in front of him turned white and then plunged into darkness. As the smell of the air changed, Ling Chen knew that he was back in the real world. He opened his eyes and looked at the familiar ceiling. Although he hadn't eaten in 2 days, with his superhuman, monstrous body, he didn't feel weak at all. He got up from the bed and saw the small figure by the bed immediately. He immediately said apologetically,
Tian, I.
Just as he started to speak, Ling Chen felt that something was stuck in his throat, preventing him from continuing. His expression also froze as his jaw dropped wide, as if it was going to smash into the floor. The girl in front of him was small and cute, and had a tender and angelic face. Her eyes shone like resplendent stars, and she had snow-white skin as well as pure white hair and eyelashes. She was silently standing there, smiling sweetly.
Shasha.
The girl in front of him was clearly Shadisika. Ling Chen was completely dumbfounded. If there was nothing wrong with his eyes or mind, and if he wasn't dreaming, he should be in the real world, not the virtual world. So how could Shasha be here?
I win. I logged off with Ling Chen.
Shadisika raised her right hand in victory as she curiously looked around while blinking her large eyes.
Ling Chen, is this your home in this world? It has a very warm feel to it. Sha, how are you here?
Under immense shock and disbelief, Ling Chen's tongue seemed to have become stiff. He reached out with his hand and placed it on Shasha's shoulder. It was warm and soft. She was definitely real, and not just some illusion. Ling Chen's mouth twitched as he inwardly screamed, "What's going on? Has the world gone crazy?" Back then, when he had been filled with despair, he suddenly heard Chiyu's voice that had completely shocked Ling Chen. The shock he felt this time was much greater, because back then it was only Chiyu's voice, while now a character from the game was standing right in front of him. This goes against all that was natural. It goes against science. It goes against common sense. Shadisika tilted her small head as she smiled and spoke in a deadly earnest tone.
Of course I came with Ling Chen. I said that as long as Ling Chen logs off, while holding my hand, I'll be able to log off with Ling Chen and come to Ling Chen's home.
Ling Chen's mouth opened, but he couldn't utter a word. The Mystic Moon World definitely wasn't just a virtual game. Ling Chen was very clear about this. Qi Yu's voice that night was proof of that. However, seeing this girl follow him from the virtual world into the real world gave him an enormous fright. Luckily, he had never thought of the Mystic Moon World purely as a game world, or he would probably have died from shock. Tap, tap, tap. The sounds of footsteps came closer. These footsteps belonged to Tian. Evidently, she had heard noise from the room, which meant that Ling Chen was awake, so she quickly hurried over. Following Tian's footsteps were two incredibly light and synchronized pairs of feet, which belonged to Chao Ying and Chao Shi. The door opened, revealing Tian's tender face. She immediately saw Ling Chen and her expression relaxed as she half-angrily asked,
"Big brother, why did it take so long?"
Halfway through her sentence, she suddenly noticed that snow fairy-like girl, causing her mouth to drop open. Behind Tian, Chao Ying, and Chao Shi also revealed expressions of shock. Because Ling Chen hadn't logged out for a while, and they had no way to contact him, they had stayed here to protect Tian. Under their protection, no one was able to enter this place without their detection. So how did this little girl suddenly appear here? Moreover, her hair was completely snow white as was her skin. She looked extremely cute. She definitely wasn't a real person, but rather an incredibly realistic doll. Otherwise, how could she have suddenly appeared here and have such a strange appearance?
"Hello, I'm called Sha.
Just like when she had met Meng Xian and the others, Shadisika didn't seem shy or afraid at all. Instead, she smiled as she looked up at Tian and the sisters and greeted them. This proved to them that she was a real, living girl and not just a cute doll. Suddenly, this bedroom, which wasn't very big, was filled with excitement. Anyone could imagine that Tian would immediately ask where this white-haired girl came from, why she was here, and how she got here. However, even if Ling Chen had 8 more heads, he wouldn't be able to answer those questions. Could he really say he had brought Sha out from the game, and that she was a special NPC from the game? If he said such a thing, let alone Tian, even Chao Ying and Chao Shi, who idolized him, wouldn't believe such a thing. They would only cover their mouths and laugh, thinking that he was trying to joke around. However, apart from that, how else could he explain how this girl had suddenly appeared in his room? She fell from the sky? She dug up from the ground? She jumped out from the TV? She's a doll that gains sentience? What's more, Sha looked completely different compared to most girls. Although she was still quite young, her hair and eyelashes were completely snow white. Even her skin was milky white. Although Ling Chen was extremely intelligent and quick-witted, he was unable to think of how to explain Sha's presence. He tried to give a random explanation as he began to sweat. Luckily, Chao Ying and Chao Shi could see how flustered he was, and they started to help him make up a story. Such as that when they went to swim, they saw a small figure flash by, which they thought was them imagining things. After rambling for a long time, they finally convinced Tian. However, the reason Tian did not continue to ask about this girl's origins wasn't because they had given a perfect explanation, but because Tian didn't seem scared or fearful of this girl, but rather happy to see her. By looking into her sparkling eyes, they could see that she deeply liked Sha. The eyes she looked at Sha with were like the eyes Ling looked at dolls with. Beautiful women were naturally enemies, and this applied to girls as well. Normally, if someone was to intrude on the two-person world that Tian and Ling Chen shared, a girl would be quite unhappy and not welcome her. However, the emotions Tian showed were the opposite. Ling Chen was surprised at just how much she liked Sha.
Sha, is that your name? It's just as cute as you. Tian's very cute as well. No wonder Ling Chen says he liked you the most.
Ling Chen was perplexed. Did I ever tell Sha about Tian?
Eh? Did Big Brother really say that?
Tian was quite surprised, but quickly recovered.
Hee, but of course. I'm so cute and obedient that of course Big Brother likes me the most. Right, how did you meet Big Brother? In the game,
Sha replied.
Ling Chen saved me from a place and said that he would take me home. Since he took me out, he needs to take responsibility. So it was in the game. Did Big Brother give you our address and you came here by yourself?
Tian asked.
Pretty much,
Sha replied.
But where are your mom and dad? Are they okay with this?
Tian asked.
My mom and dad. I don't have a mom and dad. Before I met Ling Chen, I was always by myself. Ah, so it's like that. No wonder Big Brother brought you here. Big Brother has always had a soft heart. I should tell you that I was also brought back by Big Brother, just like Sha.
Tian exclaimed.
Oh? Really? I thought you were Ling Chen's little sister.
Sha replied.
Of course not. By the way, Sha, how old are you? I don't know. I just know I'm many years old. Haha, we're quite similar. I also forgot how old I was, but in the past Big Sister said I should be around 10 years old. Sha should be around how old I am, around 10 years old, but Sha's a bit shorter than me, so I should be Sha's big sister.
Standing next to Shadisika, Tian slightly stood on her toes, seeming a tiny bit taller than Sha. She smiled with a sense of victory.
Big sister Tian.
Shadisika didn't reject this and sweetly called out.
Wow!
Tian's heart leapt upon being called Big Sister for the first time. She felt an immense sense of pride in becoming a big sister, and she remembered the love and protection Ling Rua had given her. The concept of a big sister became something warm and sacred to her, and she held Shadisika's hand as she earnestly said,
Sha, from now on I'll be your big sister. Big Brother, and I will take care of you, and we won't let anyone bully you.
Shadisika clearly and happily replied.
Sha, why is your hair completely white? It's the first time I've seen a girl with completely white hair. My hair was like this when I was born and I don't know why. Oh? Tian, what's this? It looks so strange. That's a vacuum cleaner. Has Sha never seen one before? I've seen them before, but it looks different to the ones I've seen. That's normal. There are many different types of vacuum cleaners. Then is that a TV? That's right, that's a TV. This one here's a PS8, which you can play games with. I always play with Big Brother, but Big Brother isn't very smart, so I wreck him every time. In the future, I'll play with Sha.
While Ling Chen sat in the bathroom, he heard all of Tian's words. He grumbled inwardly.
What do you mean you wreck me every time? I'm letting you win, all right? If I beat you every time, wouldn't you just start crying?
From their discussion, one could tell how much Tian liked Sha. As her big sister, she had vowed to take care of Sha and protect her. Perhaps it was because of how charming Sha was. After all, even Ling Chen couldn't resist that charm, so it could probably insta-kill any man or woman of any age. Tian was very willing for Sha to stay, just like how back then Rua, who had liked Tian, wanted to keep her with him.
Ah! I nearly forgot. Big Brother hasn't logged off in 2 days and hasn't eaten in all that time. I need to immediately make dinner. Sha, you can play with him for now. I'll be done soon. Before coming back, I couldn't cook for Ling Chen, but now I can cook yummy food for him. All right. I'm also a bit hungry.
The real world and the virtual world was completely aligned. This was Shadisika's first day in the real world, but with her incredible charm, it was as if she had always belonged to this home. Her appearance had shocked Ling Chen, but in just a few hours, her existence here seemed extremely natural. It was as if she was always part of the family. The shocked Ling Chen when Tian went to make dinner. Ling Chen found an opportunity to talk to Sha by themselves. He pulled Sha aside as he asked in a low and serious voice,
Sha, please answer me truthfully. How did you come here?
Sha blinked.
Of course, it was when Ling Chen held my hand when he logged off, bringing me here. Wasn't it like that?
Sha looked extremely cute and innocent, and no one would be able to think that she was lying. However, the problem was that what she said was simply impossible. Ling Chen scratched his head and felt quite frustrated.
How's that possible? Sha, you're an incredibly cute and good girl, so you can't tell lies. I didn't lie.
Seeing that Ling Chen didn't believe her, Sha's face fell, looking wronged.
It really was Ling Chen who brought me here. Could it be that Ling Chen hasn't tried holding anyone else's hand when logging off to bring them here?
Hold someone else's hand when logging off, in the game. Who the hell would do that? Even someone who was mentally challenged wouldn't do such a thing. Hearing Sha say this, could it be that it is possible to bring someone with him when logging off if he holds someone's hand? What the hell? I actually thought such a thing? I must be going mad. If that's true, the world would descend into chaos. However, seeing how wrong Sha looked, even though he didn't believe it at all, he was unable to continue asking. He hurriedly said,
Yes, of course I believe Sha, but if it's like that, how do I take Sha back into the game? It's very simple.
Sha stretched out her small hand to hold Ling Chen's big hand and said,
Ling Chen just needs to hold my hand when logging on to take me back into the game. Are you sure? Of course. Since Ling Chen can bring me out by holding my hand when logging off, he can take me back by holding my hand when he logs on.
This ridiculous suggestion was said extremely matter-of-factly by Sha. Ling Chen didn't say anything. He held Shadisika's hand and sat down on the sofa. He tilted his head back and logged on to the game.
Ding! Welcome to the Mystic Moon world. We hope you enjoying playing.
As the pleasant voice sounded out, his vision became filled with a green forest, and he could smell the refreshingly fresh air. This all told Ling Chen that he had returned to the virtual world. However, he could feel something soft within his hands.
Wow! We're back already. The air here is so nice.
Shadisika vigorously breathed in the fresh air here. The fairy forest was naturally pure and clean, and the pure air here simply could not be compared to the polluted air in the real world. Looking over and seeing Shadisika next to him, Ling Chen felt like he was turning into stone.
Lala. I'm the pretty and cute little Kair. I'm a pure and kind fairy.
The clear sound of singing could be heard, and very soon a small, light green figure appeared in Ling Chen's vision. She sang as she beat her small wings and flew around, carrying a small basket in her hands while collecting honey like a small bee. Seeing Ling Chen, she gave a small exclamation as she happily flew over.
Big brother, why are you here? Are you here to play with Sha? Hello, little Kair.
Shadisika smiled as she greeted Kair.
Kair, why are you here?
Ling Chen asked. He still felt stupefied, and his mind was incredibly chaotic.
Granny told me to go home to collect some fairy fountain water. The new city will be our new home, so we want to pour the fairy fountain water on the soil in the new city. That's what Granny said.
Kair spoke clearly as she floated in front of Ling Chen and Sha. Her sweet voice could make anyone feel like they had just eaten honey.
Oh, it's like that.
Ling Chen began to reply. He suddenly frowned as he stretched his hand towards Kair.
Kair, give me your hand. Hand? Is Big Brother going to give me something fun?
Little Kair blinked before she gave her hand for Ling Chen to hold. Without saying anything, Ling Chen immediately logged off. The scene before his eyes changed as Ling Chen opened his eyes. He saw that he was in his living room, and just as he was about to get up, a voice that definitely shouldn't exist in this world sounded out by his ears.
Where is this? We were definitely in the fairy forest. Why would we suddenly be here?
Ling Chen looked up and saw Kair floating there, her small head almost hitting the chandelier. She continuously turned as she looked around, her eyes filled with fear, shock, and confusion. Ling Chen felt his legs grow weak, and he almost fell to the ground. An illusion, an illusion. This was definitely all an illusion. It was all an illusion.
I was right. As long as Ling Chen holds our hands when he logs off, we'll be able to log off with him.
Shura, who had acquitted herself, giggled as she spoke. Ling Chen stared at Kair before standing up with a whoosh. He grabbed Kair's small hand and entered the game, although he let go of Shura's hand.
Ding! Welcome to the Mystic Moon world. We hope you enjoy playing.
The familiar login voice sounded out as the scenery in front of him became the fairy forest again. Shura wasn't beside them, but in front of him, Kair was staring at him with a pair of confused and innocent eyes.
That was all an illusion, all an illusion,
Ling Chen said seriously as he looked at Kair.
Illusion?
Kair said as she opened her mouth.
That's right, it was all an illusion. We were here the whole time, but everything Kair saw was fake. It was just a fun game,
Ling Chen said as he smiled stiffly. The pure and innocent Kair was very easily tricked, and she immediately believed Ling Chen's words. She let out a small sigh of relief.
Ah! Illusion, illusion, illusion. So there was a game like that nearly scared me to death. That game seems really fun though. Big Brother actually knows such a game. You're so amazing. Of course. If Kair wants to play, I can take Kair to play next time.
Ling Chen smiled before changing the topic.
That's right, Kair. Didn't your granny ask you to bring back some water from the fairy fountain? Hurry and go home, otherwise your granny might get angry.
Uh-huh. Kair obediently nodded and flew towards the fairy realm.
Big Brother needs to remember to take me to play that illusion game again next time.
Ling Chen tricked Kair with a few words, but Ling Chen's heart was still pounding. He spread his hands and looked at his palms, his head incredibly muddled. My God, my ancestors. What the hell is going on? He had thought that he could take Shura out and bring her back because it was her. After all, he had brought Shura out from a strange place, so she didn't belong to the Mystic Moon world. She evidently still contained many mysteries. However, he could even bring Kair out. Kair was a fairy from the Mystic Moon world. She definitely belonged to the virtual world. Since it was like that, perhaps it was him. Could it be that in this game, if a player held someone's hand when logging off, they could bring them to the real world? 3 minutes ago, if anyone said this, Ling Chen would think that they were crazy. However, he had actually done this. This was reality. If this was true, just what was going on with the Mystic Moon world? If it was true, why had he never heard of such a thing happening before? There were billions of people in the world, so surely some players, who were not right in their head, had tried such a thing before.
Little Master, what happened? Your heart is beating so erratically. Could it be that you've met some sort of exquisite beauty?
Chi Yu's voice suddenly sounded out in Ling Chen's mind, causing his mind to freeze. He immediately spoke.
Chi Yu, I just encountered something incomprehensible. Perhaps you'll know the answer to it.
Oh,
Qiyu sounded quite curious. Ling Chen stretched out his hand as he frowned.
When I logged off and held Shasha's hand, I actually brought her to the real world.
Qiyu.
When I held her hand and logged on, I brought her back. Just then, I met Kair and the exact same thing happened. When I held her hand and logged off, I brought her out with me, and when I held her hand when logging on, she came back here. What's going on?
Ling Chen asked as he frowned. He had found out that the two worlds intersected because of Qiyu. It was when Qiyu had suddenly appeared to him in the real world, letting him know that the Mystic Moon world was not that simple. As such, the only person who could answer this question was Qiyu. Qiyu thought for a moment, as if she was shocked by what Ling Chen had said. Following this, she replied with a look of shock.
Such a thing actually happened? Are you sure it was real? Would I joke around with you over such a childish joke?
Ling Chen said in frustration.
If you don't know what's going on, how did your voice and image appear to me in the real world? That's completely different,
Qiyu replied.
Little Master should know that I don't have a real body, and I exist as a soul and live in the Lunar Scourge. When Little Master enters the virtual world, it's your mind or your soul dot. The reason my voice and image could appear in your world was because before you logged off, I attached some of my soul onto your own and go to your world with your soul. That way, I can experience your world through your senses as well as speak with my voice and create an image that looks similar to me. However, that's only a small part of my soul, and whether it is simply sensing, speaking, or projecting an image, it can only last for a very short period of time. What Little Master just spoke of was bringing Sha and Kair's bodies into the real world. Honestly, even I'm so shocked that I can hardly believe it. HM? Could it be because of the Lunar Scourge? Lunar Scourge?
Ling Chen raised his wrist.
What does it have to do with that? The Lunar Scourge is an ancient evil item, and it is something left behind by the gods that also contains the power of true gods. It is something incomprehensible even to the apex creatures of this day and age. As such, the Lunar Scourge contains some mysterious and incomprehensible powers. If what Little Master said was true, I think the Lunar Scourge is the only explanation.
As Qiyu spoke, the Lunar Scourge on Ling Chen's wrist flashed as a woman with an incredibly enchanting and seductive body, wearing a black muslin dress, appeared before Ling Chen. Her jet black hair fell across her shoulders, and her black eyebrows were like fog. Her beautiful eyes looked around her surroundings, and her skin was as glossy and smooth as sheep rouge and white jade, while her thin black muslin dress barely covered her fiery body. The cloth in front of her chest was spread open, revealing her large, round, and perky breasts. The tight muslin clung onto them, making them seem extremely proud, and her cleavage could make any normal man's blood boil. The demoness Qiyu. Although Ling Chen had known Qiyu for a long time, upon seeing her looks and body again, he couldn't help but stare as he thought of a household item. A bed,